G'day, enlightened listeners. AoS Coach bringing you the radiance in this episode where we're going to talk the Lumineth Realm Lords. I am joined by Jacob Strachen, who has the precision of a Sentinel and the grace of a Riverblade. He has previously, or just recently, placed second in Australia's largest tournament. I was going to say second largest. No, you came second in Australia's largest Age of Sigmar tournament, going 6-1-1, which included being in the grand final. You didn't quite beat that one, but I think getting through 159 other players to get to the final with Lumineth is a incredible performance. I have no doubt in my mind that Jacob is going to illuminate the path of mastery with his powers of Hysh, because I am already feeling enlightened. How's that?
That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Like, it's really, really great to be here. I don't think that, like, if we had this conversation like a couple of years ago when you and I were playing and I was just doing a lot of control stuff, I don't think you'd be that positive. But some very fun memories of
Maitland,
heads in hands, and Maitland especially. Yep.
No, to be fair, like you used to annoy the shit out of me when you played Jazinch. Like, I'd be sitting there with my Gargant, you go, Bellacore, I have 20 spells, and I'd be like, Jacob, can I just go to the toilet? And then, like, you double turn me, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go get some dinner as well, and I'll come back. But Jacob, I've been playing for a long time. Jacob was one of my locals until he moved away, but this has probably been a long time coming. You know, this is not a flash in the pan. You've definitely done incredibly well in the past. You've been a long-term Lumineth player, yes, also a Tzeentch player, so a lot of commonality between those two types of builds. But also, you've done incredibly well. You've done well at Bathurst GT. You're always in that podium spot or vying for podium at a lot of the major events. So I'm really looking forward to getting under the hood, because we were talking a little bit, and I'll get Jake to introduce himself in a minute. But we got talking, and part of this got me excited because Lumineth has been on a bit of a downward trend for a while. We saw Lumineth spike a little bit with, you know, the Fox build, and we've seen a lot of Dawn Rider spam. And Jacob and I were looking at the stats, and I think Warhammer had the height of Lumineth around the almost 60% mark at one particular point around October, vying for the same space of Tzeentch and OBR and Nighthaunt. And then we looked at post-battle scroll. It's gone down to, I think right now, Warhammer has it down to 44%. So Lumineth's in this really weird spot, and I don't think it's a bad army. I just think that people have gone back to the drawing board and trying to work out what works. Is Teclis good? Is it about Foxes still? Do I need to switch to another particular part of the book? Am I spamming Riverblades? I think this is where Jacob's going to help kind of guide the light to say, how are we going? How do we make the most of it? And what do we do since we've had a couple of changes? But Jacob, introduce yourself and share a little bit about why you got into Lumineth.
So I have been playing Warhammer for 14 years now, just on and off. About 5 years ago, I was working in a game store and I was getting into Age of Sigmar with my friend. I had a Tzeentch army, so that's what I played. And I got into Lumineth out of the gate when they first came out. I was building an IDK army because I do just love elves. And then Lumineth came out and I was like, pointy elves, let's go. Much to my friend's chagrin, I was a Teclis spammer against his Daughters of Cain, and we just played a lot through second edition. And then, like many people are aware, we had COVID around a similar time of third edition. When COVID ended, I ran one of the first RTTs in Sydney after COVID, and I had a really great time there. I believe you were there, and it was it was really incredible. And so I got into that. My brother and I took turns running events, and eventually he took over after I moved to Canberra. The Lumineth has just always been my favorite army. Like, I love Tzeentch, but Lumineth really scratches that blue magic player mentality of mine. And it's such a fascinating army to me because I always describe it as every turn is a puzzle. There's always a correct path. And I think I've lost connection.
No, you're good. I can still see you, man. Keep going. You're all good.
Oh yeah, sorry. The army's always a puzzle. Every turn's a puzzle. The there's always a path towards victory, and it's just about figuring out how to put the pieces together. And while there are times when it's obvious, it's just like, oh, cast these spells in these orders, move these units that move really fast into these positions. You have such a wide variety of options in everything that you do, from list building to deployment to actually playing the army, that it is just a really fun army to play once you really get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating army. It reminds me a lot of my Cities of Sigmar, right? Where, you know, the unit itself is never that great. Like, you look at a War Scroll in Lumineth, and it's okay, it's fine. But the power really comes through the internal synergy, taking advantage of your battle formations, of your little buff bot heroes, your Teclis, and, all of the things that you can possibly do. And it probably is no surprise that the win rate at this point in time has dropped dramatically, because people thought they'd worked it out. They had the Dawn Riders, maybe reinforced, maybe multiple units of Dawn Riders. You were playing around with the Hurricane Wind Spirits. Maybe you had an Severeth. People have been playing around with Riverblades. People have been playing with all these units. Now that all still changed, it's like, okay, it's not like it's not like my Tzeentch, right? I was going to run Tzeentch at CanCon, and my army went up close to 200 points, right? But that's easy. I'm like, it's either a unit of Pink Horrors, or I could drop the Changeling and I'm done. I just play the same army. But for you, the minute a rule tweaks, it's like a fundamental restart. It's like, right, back to the drawing board. Let's try some things. And, like, you didn't get a lot of success at LVO, you as a faction, not you personally, Jacob. You weren't at LVO.
I was unfortunately not there.
I think the best list at the time, weeks after the battle scroll, was 3-2. So shout out to that player, great to pave the way. But it's going to take time. So I'm hoping through this discussion, because I've got a lot of questions, man, like, is that 44%, actually showing you that you're the worst faction? And I don't believe that's true.
I don't either.
So I keep going. Go.
Oh, sorry. I was going to just say that I think that I completely agree that it is a thing of people just need to figure out how to play the army again. Not like saying that I've seen the future and I have figured it out. I just think that the style of Lumineth that I play, and I'll talk about this a little bit more if we look at my list, is very different to the style that was played when it was the Huracan and Dawn Rider movement. I tried those lists. If you remember at Cine GT, I was running a good chunk of Dawn Riders, and it just didn't work for me as a play style. And while I could sit there and know that it was better than the list that I wanted to run, I know that the playstyle just doesn't work for me. And I think that I have just kind of lucked into a position where my playstyle of Lumineth works really well with what we currently have. And I think that is the way that Lumineth is going to move forward in the future.
And I swear I will bring up the list and we'll break it down a little bit. But set the scene for me, right? We've had 7 or 8 months now. Where do you think Lumineth stands in the meta, and what are we good at?
So I think that Lumineth is the gatekeepers of like the top tier armies. I think that before an army can like be raised above the rest of us mere mortals and be in that top tier of these armies are going to consistently be in that 5-0 bracket, it needs to be able to take out a Lumineth army, and it needs to be able to win that. I think that Lumineth's strongest point is and always has been just consistency. It's the abilities and the way that everything fits together in the puzzle piece really just creates an army that will always be able to do what it does. Because of that, so I think that Lumineth is always just going to be in that good bracket. High movement, really good defensive capabilities if you build into it, and having like kind of a low ceiling for damage, but having a really high floor. I played so many games against like Soulblight Gravelords and armies that use resurrection mechanics, and instead of just outright killing units, you can very accurately with Lumineth take a unit down to 1 wound, because you just know how much damage you're going to do because it's just consistent. Not crazy high. You're not going to put out Iron Jewel amounts of damage or Idoneth amounts of damage, but you can always get that damage no matter what, and that comes from movement, range, and the tech that you have. At the same time, I think that the army has a lot of tools to deny battle tactics, which is really important in the current meta. And if Lumineth, if like the 44% thing was really accurate to the status of Lumineth in the game, they wouldn't be able to deny tactics as well as they could, and they wouldn't be as versatile as they are. I think it's just this adjustment period. It's a period of uncomfortability for the army. And once people adjust to it, and once Lumineth players as a whole adjust to this uncomfortability, it will go up again. I can see it going up to 55%, and I don't think it'll take very long either.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think the army is bad. I don't think there's bad rules. I don't think you've had major nerfs. Yes, you've had a couple of adjustments on some problematic units. You may not think it's problematic, but like some particular units. But most people who are listening to this are Lumineth players. They're not going to think it's problematic. My point is, like, whatever you think, it's not like the faction is bad. There was a couple of things that have been adjusted, but it's now just like, right. And we're going to talk about like what we like and what we don't like. And, you know, I know I've had plenty of people asking, like, does Teclis really have a spot? You know, I haven't seen many Teclises around these days. So it's like, is he 2 points adjusted? You know, like what is it about this centerpiece model that we like or we don't like? So anyway, we will get into that very, very, very soon. But before I get into your list, you know, I'm holding this just a little bit longer, hopefully building some anticipation. What did you learn about Lumineth through playing 8 games of Warhammer and going 6-1-1? I imagine you played a wide variety of opponents. You would have played some of the meta lists. You just talked a little bit about battle tactics and really stress testing that. What was that experience like for you?
So over the 8 games, I played against 6 different armies. In the 5 games of the main event, it was 2 Gitz armies, 2 Seraphon armies, and 2 Skaven and 1 Skaven army. The Gitz armies, I'm sure every Lumineth player who's going to be watching and every Destruction army player watching knows that that is the dream. You want to be playing against those armies that hit on 4s and that use Rend, because as the way I play it, I've got my Enlightener, I have my Blade Lords, I'm -1 to hit, I've got my 5-up ward, I'm giving out Ethereal, and that is the matchup that I want, is against those Destruction armies that use Rend. By the way, on behalf of Trump, I have 2 armies. I hate you, Lumineth. I remember, is it 3rd edition where you're like, spend 2 CP for the price of 1? I'm like, I hate you. Yeah. And then Seraphon was a really interesting matchup for me. I haven't played against it in the new edition, or hadn't until I played against it twice at CanCon. The matchup was really fun. A lot of interaction on both sides, a lot of interruption on both sides. But the dice fell my way in those games. I think I played them well, but they were really, really fun. The variance in it really came down to, I played against 2 very different Seraphon lists. One was castling up with the Croxagore and trying to hit really hard with those and the Raptidon charges. And then the other one was an Agrodon list. So I kind of applied my same mentality of, I'm going to move Blade Lords into the middle, I'm going to take the hit, and I'm going to swing back and then win the game on battle tactics. And while I played against a big variety of armies, my strategy in all 8 games was exactly the same. It goes back to the consistency I was talking about. Even in my run at Bathurst GT last year, before all the nerfs, all 5 of those games were the exact same strategy. I do seize the center in the first turn, I move into the middle of the board, Ethereal Blessing, Protection of Hysh, get my defenses up, and then people can't cut through the Blade Lords. Maybe like spoiling a bit of like my favorite unit in the army, but those Blade Lords have just been so consistent for me, and it's really just been the linchpin of the playstyle, and it has brought in that consistency of no matter what I'm up against, I can do the same thing every single game.
For the people who may not have made the connection, like why is that working for you? Like, why is it take Caesar Center, then apply Ethereal and the various buffs? Like, why is that so important to you as a player?
So it comes down to this playstyle this philosophy that I have with Lumineth, where I find that if you want to play a gun, play a different army. I think Lumineth is much less about the high damage output and much more about the tricks and the tech and the defensive play. I kind of treat Lumineth a bit like Nurgle. I just move up the board, I take a dominant position in the center, and I try to just be defensive and withstand the hit. Because my hit back is going to be good, and I can, in most situations, withstand the hit. So that Sees the Center I find is really good. And the reason I think it's really good, especially with Blade Lords, is the consistency. So with Blade Lords, you don't need Protection of Hysh because they get the 5-up ward from just having the hero nearby. You don't need Power of Hysh because with Perfect Strike, they always get the damage out. They don't need the extra damage from the crit mortals. And if you can invest in that castle, your power projection, your ability to put power anywhere on the board, and especially with River Blades and Foxes, you can be anywhere on the board. You're able to do every mission objective, every battle tactic, pretty much any turn you want. Basically, it's a parlay that I make with my opponent that if I'm going first, I can take the middle of the board, and if you can't deal with my front line, I will win the game with shooting units and movement. And if you take the center of the board, I can use my shooting units and movement to win the game in other ways.
Yeah, it's a real toolbox, like when you look at the ability to project, and obviously depending on the build, right? You know, you've got some speed and some durability and retreating and shooting and generally being annoying. You've got that projection of power if you want to be shooting at long range. You know, you've got some deep striking abilities. And I think this might be part of the challenge of the win percentage is like, right, I've got so many tools. Which is the one do I pull from the toolbox? And based on the meta, right? Like when we had that dominant Nighthaunt, it's like, right, I know what I'm looking at, right? But now we've had this emergence of Stormcast. We've had this emergence of high armor saves like Slaves to Darkness and 1-drops all coming out of, we did have Varangard for a while. Now it's jumping out of, Gaunt Summoners, and Chosen are now the more popular over the Cav, and it's now just finding that right tool to respond to the meta, and partially why, if you pick the wrong answer, you're going to get smacked in the face because you haven't got the right tool for the job. Or anything else you want to respond? Because I'm going to bring up your list otherwise.
I'm happy to go to the list. I'll use the list to talk about the differences between the old lists and what I'm doing.
Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm going to bring up the list. I'll read it out for the folks who are painting and not quite looking at the screen. So this is your Call to Glory list. CanCon, Australia's largest tournament, over 160 players in Oz. It's obviously a Lumineth Realm Lords list. It is Hurricane Temple coming in at 1980. It has the Law of Hysh and Forbidden Power. I still think you need a second spell law. If Tzeentch can get a second spell law, I think so can you. It doesn't make any sense, but that's beyond this conversation here. It is a 2-drop. You have the twins, who are the general. You've got the Hurricane Wind, Spirit of the Wind. You've got your Wind Chargers who are reinforced. You have the Venari Sentinels reinforced. All of that packaged up in your general's reg. You've also then got 2nd Regiment led by a Senari Enlightener who's got Masterful Tactician and the Silver Wand. You've got yourself a reinforced unit of Blade Lords. You have a unreinforced unit of Blade Lords. And then you have everyone's favorite new unit, the River Blades. I remember being at the World Championships in November, and people were so excited to see them on the shelf. And I think they were probably the first units to disappear back in November because people were like, I haven't been able to buy them. I need them ASAP. They are a good unit. Very good unit.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. The 2 weeks before CanCon was my first time playing with them. I hadn't played with them beforehand because I couldn't find space for them in the lists that I was running. But around Christmas time, I was up in Sydney, played some games against some friends there, and I fell in love with them. The play of them is just so much fun. And like I was describing to one of the people I played against at CanCon, when I described each unit, it was, this guy's a bastard, and here's why. And that's Lumineth in a nutshell.
So before you talk about the build and what you were trying to achieve, what does this list do? And what were you mostly worried against? Is this like an all-comers list where it doesn't matter? Because CanCon, right, you can't build into the meta because you may play 5 Stormcast lists, you may play none, right? So, you've got to be very, very flexible. So what was this build to do? And what were you most concerned about from a tournament perspective?
So I find that Lumineth, I try to build to be able to withstand a hit and then just move around the board and take tactics. I realized kind of midway through CanCon the ability that I have to deny tactics as well. The Enlightener is the MVP of that. So all of it is just vital to the list. I had so many conversations with people about, oh, what's the best unit in the army? What's making the army work? And it really is every single piece. Every single piece helps the army function. Starting from the top, the Huracan Temple, having access to move like the wind is just vital. It gives me the ability to do the power projection and still be safe. And the other battle trait I chose every round for the whole tournament was Shining Company. I don't do Power of Hysh. I don't do Scenari Council unless I'm going for it really hard. Alania and LR4, the twins, they are, if I had to name an MVP, it is them. Their multifaceted use is just incredible. The amount of times that I would just plant them somewhere and they sit there with a 4-up save, 4-up ethereal, a 4-up ward, 8 wounds, that's really tanky. And a piece of tech that not a lot of people understand is their teleport ability, the end of turn teleport. It triggers off any model they kill in any way. So people will move off of their objectives and they're like, oh, he's going to covering fire with those sentinels. And then I covering fire with Alania and Elafor, pick off one squig, and then teleport at the end of my opponent's turn and take their back objective. It's a small tech that just people do not think about. They read the rule and they don't understand it fully. The Wind Spirit is the Wind Spirit. It's still just an absolute powerhouse of a unit. Dominantly from its movement, it doesn't do an incredible amount of damage in my opinion, but the movement is insane. 18 inches, able to run and shoot and do everything, able to move after it shoots. It's also kind of a necessary unit if you're going to run as many wind charges as I am. Because I'm running 10 wind charges, I kind of need them to be able to retreat and run and shoot, and the Wind Spirit provides. The wind charges are probably the highest damage unit. Sentinels can do more damage in theory, but so many armies have ward saves now, and the wind charges, that power projection is so vital with them. And they are just a lot of wounds. I remember when 3rd edition started, and I first learned that Dawn Riders are on a 3-up save, and then I learned that they're 3 wounds each. I was like blown away. And then I saw wind charges are a 4-up save, 3 wounds each, and are just phenomenal. And they've got 14-inch move now. And they move after they shit. Like, it's all just crazy.
I got to play the wind charges. My first opponent, was a Lumineth player, a little different to yours. Did have 2 units of wind charges not reinforced, and yeah, being able to run up the board, take those pot shots, get out of there. Really make scoring battle tactics hard against you, just generally being annoying. They definitely do a lot of damage, but obviously yours would probably do even more given as reinforced and you've got that efficiency. And by the way, I'm like, how on earth the twins have the 4-up ward? Because obviously the keyword says 5.
Yeah.
You're clearly choosing the equal proteges with with Eleanor taking the lead as opposed to the other.
A lot, yeah. So, yeah, with Alania and Elafor, I'll most often choose Alania. I like to have the extra cast. The 4-up ward is very nice. I'll only really ever choose Elafor if I need that damage. And I'll only really ever do it against something that is a base save of 5 or 6. Because the sword's only rend 1. So I've sent them into Shrogs and just done nothing, even though it's round 5. But then I've sent them into, like, hordes of squigs, and they deal 50 damage. So it's just that watching out for the amount for the defensive capabilities of the opponent with that. So I do favor Alania in most situations.
Unless you need to fight yourself out. And I guess the later the game, the more damage you do. So it makes sense to keep the ward around, keep it on the table as long as possible. Because it is, only 8 health, but
and people don't realize it. Their control score 4 as well. I did not realize that until CanCon. Because most of the time they're sitting on an objective on their own. I think it's the idea is that it's 2 5-unit heroes.
Yeah.
Love it. The Sentinels are amazing. I think the Sentinels are fantastic. The thing that I love about them in this list particularly is the split of the shooting. Having 2 heavy shooting units in my game against Liam in the last round at Call to Glory, I was fully aware that Liam is an incredible player with a high moving army. He is going to kill one of them, the Wind Chargers or the Sentinels, very early. And in a lot of my games, I sort of have that belief that I'm going to lose one of these, but I have 2, so it's fine. And so you sort of like, whichever one my opponent ends up going for, I sort of like lean on the other and try to defend it more and play more defensively with it. And the Sentinels make the castle work, because a castle moving into the center of the board that can't hurt you doesn't do anything unless the center of the board is filled with objectives. Like a castle that doesn't have a way to hit you is ineffective. The Enlightener makes this idea of the castle work entirely through Ethereal Blessing. Ethereal, if you play against a list like this, I promise you, I know Total Eclipse is really annoying. I know Overwhelming Heat is really annoying to play against. Unbind Ethereal Blessing. It's the most important spell to unbind, because if you're running at Blade Lords with like 2 rend and you think you're going to kill them, and then your opponent rolls 5 4-ups, I've seen how infuriating it is. I have had the opportunity to play against it, and I know how infuriating it is, but they just stay there because of Ethereal Blessing. And because of the way that their doubling ability works, the Runes of Enfly, I believe it's called, you get 4 bites at the apple before your opponent can hit your army, because you get it on your turn and then you get it with magical intervention. So I have 4 opportunities, or I consider it as 4 opportunities to give my 2 units of Blade Lords Ethereal Blessing. And if I get more than that, I chuck it on Alania and Elthor, I chuck it on the River Blades, I chuck it on the Sentinels, and I just make them tanky as well. And you just restrict the amount of options that your opponent has to hit you effectively. Like I said, the Blade Lords are my favorite unit in the army. I've thought that they were really good since 3rd edition, back in the day when they used to take wounds for the heroes on a 2-up. Very, very fun, for me at least. The thing I love about Blade Lords is that it is all about consistency with them. They exist in a way that allows you to do everything you want to do, even if you fuck it up. Like if I don't get Ethereal Blessing off, that sucks, but I can still move them up, and they're going to be a -1 to hit unit that has a 5-up ward. If I don't get Protection of Hysh, I just need my castle to be a little bit smaller, and I can move up, because as long as they're near my Enlightener or near Alania and Elthor, I get that 5-up ward.
Would you have believed that's true, say, 3 or 4 months ago, when we were probably in much more of a cavalry meta? And it feels like we've got more and more infantry now hitting on the table, and you clearly get the extra rend from those flurry of blows, sorry. Do you think it's like a meta pick, or do you think it's always been good regardless of cav?
I think they've always been good regardless of cavalry. What I find with Blade Lords is that the perfect strike is what I'm doing more often than I'm doing flurry of blows, even into infantry. Because when I'm fighting with Blade Lords, I'm not trying to wipe the other unit. I'm just trying to reduce their number of attacks so my Blade Lords can live longer. I'm really just like existing in that defensive philosophy. Because I do think that's the way to play them, is very defensively. On the note of like that old meta...
Yeah, it's just like we got the crit mortals, you've got the anti-infantry, 3 attacks apiece, like that screams to me damage.
Yeah, I mean, it does do very good damage, and I'm very happy, and I used it against Chosen in particular at CanCon. But like, what I have found with it is what I found is that Lumineth's really big strength when it comes to damage is against low wound armies. So like high save, low wound is what we're good against. I really like playing against Slaves to Darkness with Lumineth. Stormcast less so, because the shooting capability of Stormcast hurts a lot. But the good save, low damage is low health is really nice to play against. And when if I have 10 Chosen come into 10 Blade Lords, unless I have Power of Hysh on those Blade Lords, Protection of Hysh isn't going to do enough damage to really just annihilate the unit. But I know that, Flurry of Blows isn't going to do that damage, but I know that Perfect Strike is going to kill a couple of them. Because if I've got 11 attacks with my reinforced unit, Chosen are 3 wounds apiece, I'm going to pick off 2 of them with a 2-up mortal wound. And that's going to be 8 less attacks into me, and it's just all about that staying power. And I'll rely more on my shooting units to do that damage. And even when it comes to trying to be offensive and trying to get that bit of damage in to do that finishing blow, every time I've pushed up Blade Lords to try and be offensive with them and go for that killing blow, my shooting units, my chip shooting damage, ends up putting them in dealing enough damage so that the Perfect Strike is a better option anyway. because if I chip down a unit so it's got like 9 wounds left, I'd rather take 11 chances at the 2-up to get 9 rather than the 31 chances at a 6-up mortal.
Yeah, it's the 4-up to wound, right, that kills you. Like, against a horde, against low armor save, yeah, go for it. But I guess when you've got those, and one of the questions I did have to you is like, how do you handle these high armor saves? Because we have seen Slaves, Stormcast, Ossiarch, Bone Reapers, just as one of the many examples who are running around with those 3-up armor saves. And, you know, yeah, Flurry of Blows is not going to do that well. You know, yes, your archers are going to do some stuff, especially if you can do the crit auto wounds on 5s, but that's a really good tactic in how you potentially get through that.
Yeah. And I find that, that 2-up mortal wound has been really consistent for it. The solution that I have been thinking about a lot recently when it comes to those high on the save armies, because obviously we don't have crit mortals on the Sentinels anymore, rest in peace, in a good way. Trying to get in the Light of Eltharion. That 3 rend on his main sword is incredible in some of those situations. And I didn't think it would do as much for me as it did. But in Forbidden Power, the Horrorghast, the 3 rend on its shooting actually did like a good amount of work for me. And I was very happy with that, into those infantry units, of course.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a Light of Eltharion in 4th edition yet. Like, it became quite popular as like a mini Gotrek for a while. But I don't think I've seen it, or at least haven't seen it in a higher performing LRL list. So you might have some secret sauce.
I think the next list I'm going to try involves him and more Blade Lords and giving him Field Marshal or Field Sergeant for the 2 inches of extra move, which will apply to him, it'll apply to Alania and Elafor, and it'll apply to the 20 Blade Lords.
Because I was going to ask you, does this unit have to have its own regiment? But no, this hero can join
go in
eligible regiments. Yeah, that's a nice little sneaky piece of tech you got there.
Yeah, it's something that I'm like really interested in trying out. I think 20 Blade Lords around Light of Eltharion and Alania and Elafor is a really strong, just like melee castle that can just move around and pick things off. And fighting 2 at a time with the buddy cop Alania and Elafor, Light of Eltharion, is amazing. Because you send them into, say, a low save, let's take Gitz. I'm going to talk about it because it's the one I know best. Send that into some Squig or Boingor Bounders and Trogs. Light of Eltharion will take care of the Trogs with his rend, and Alania and Elafor will wipe out Squigs with a really high damage sword. And they complement each other's weaknesses really well.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, actually. I haven't quite seen something like that. You know, traditionally you've always been, as you said, blue deck, but that control type army chipping away, generally being annoying. Like, I don't think I've seen very much high volume damage. And in fact, a lot of those lists back in the day used to be centered around the defensive powers of Teclis, right? As well, that durability and longevity and just, just denying your opponent through attrition.
I think that there is a space for a really offensive Lumineth, and that's what we were seeing a couple of months ago with the Huracan list and the Dawn Riders list. It was really just like a high output. We are going to wipe out the opponent, and we're going to create a game state where my opponent can't really do anything to stop what I'm doing. And I find that it was this period of Lumineth where, because Huracan was so cheap, and at the same time, it wasn't that it was a high damage, you could just get more in your list because they were very cheap. And then it was all very safe because it was all moving back so far. And then Riverblades are really safe because they were dancing all over the place. And you could just control the battlefield so well, but also have this high shooting output. And then when that fell out of favor after the nerfs to the Riverblades combat phase move and the nerfs to move like the wind, we saw Dawn Riders become really powerful because that first turn of getting them in with Power of Hysh and just nuking a unit was really incredible. It was just like a very, very large amount of damage. And I find that, like, I tried that kind of list at Sydney GT and not all in. I played like my castle, but then I supplemented it with some Dawn Riders. And I just found that it didn't really fit my philosophy. And it was a really strong list, and I don't deny that at all. But I personally couldn't make it work just because my brain disagreed with it. And I find that the dice have fallen in such a way that a more defensive castle-y Lumineth has become more favorable. I think that you, as Lumineth, the hard adjustment for a lot of players, including myself, was moving to this kind of philosophy where our wins are smaller. You're winning by like 2 points or 4 points or 1 point most games, rather than having these wins by 20 points than that we were getting a couple of months ago. But those wins by 1 to 5 points are just really consistent. And you just always have an option with this defensive playstyle. And that's what eventually led me to this list, centered around the consistent Blade Lords, the consistent River Blades, the consistent Sentinels, Wind Chargers, Spirit of the Wind, Alliance L4, Enlightener. It's all just really consistent. And the thing I haven't talked about yet is Forbidden Power. At this stage, Forbidden Power feels like the auto-include when you run a shooting unit that can't retreat and shoot. Again, it's about consistency. Even if you get a unit into my Sentinels, if I get the spell off the bridge, I get to shoot with them on my turn. And I think that Lumineth is one of the only armies that uses Lock on the Soulseeker well, because we're the only army with a combat wizard that is infantry and is really good in combat, and that's Alania and Elephor. So I have often, if my opponent's going first, I magical intervention for him, so that way on my first turn, my Alania and Elephor has 12 inches of movement.
Yeah, there's not really a lot. Like, I'm trying to reflect on, obviously 3rd edition, it was all about Thankwall, right? Thankwall was the delivery mechanism. But yeah, you're right. Like, I haven't seen a lot of people using Longchin in that type of way. So, and again, this goes back to the speed of Lumineth, right? Like, goes back to the speed and picking the battle where you want to pick it. I think that's one of the strengths as well that are underestimated, is that you've got so much speed or projection of power or even debuff abilities that a smart general can pick the spot on the battlefield to try to have the best outcome of that fight. And I think Forbidden Power just plays into that even more than what's already on the list there, right? Between the Sentinels with their long range, the Wind Spirit and the Wind Chargers being able to move around, shoot. And, like I was looking at Phil Marshall's list, who did incredibly well. One of the higher performers you guys have had in, this is pre-Battle Scroll. And it was focused on 3 foxes, including the named fox, as well as 2 units of Dawn Riders and a couple of minor heroes here and there. Like, it was like 2 units of reinforced Dawn Riders, just the speed, the mobility, the damage output. But it is all very all in.
Yeah, it's this difference where it's like, Phil, is that his name? Phil. Be more about, I am really fast and I'm going to hit you really hard, and there's nothing you can do about it. And then my list and my philosophy on Lumineth is, I am really fast. You can't kill me. You can't do anything about it. And that's like the feels bad of Lumineth that a lot of people talk about, is that you don't feel like you can do anything. Because again, it is blue. But we have so much going on that it's hard to understand what you need to focus on to beat us. And a lot of armies, unfortunately, just don't have the tools to do it, because a lot of it does come down to we are too fast and we're too elusive. And some armies just don't have the ability to pick off heroes very well, and we kind of focus around our heroes. You asked earlier about what I was scared of going into CanCon, and it was very much Stormcast. I think that Lumineth as a whole, and the way that I play Lumineth, there's not a lot of losing matchups. There are some really hardcore winning matchups, like most armies that hit on 4s really struggle against a Venari-based Lumineth. But I find that most matchups are relatively in the sphere of somewhere even. And that's one of the things that I like about the army, is that it's got good matchups all over the place. But Stormcast, because they have that movability, they have that able to be everywhere, and then power projection. And then they also have the ability to pick off the key pieces. And when we first looked at the list, first thing I said was that everything in the list is vital and is a necessary piece. It's not like classic Index Hammer, War Scroll Hammer, where you pick the best War Scroll and you just spam it. It's a bunch of pieces that come together, very much like you said, that aren't amazing on their own, but when they come together in this medley of consistency and power, it just sings really well. And so being able to pick off those individual pieces that I can't necessarily protect very well is really important. Like if I go up against an army where I have to be using Ethereal Blessing on my Sentinels, they're my first priority, then that's I'm not in a good situation because now my Blade Lord's going to get picked.
I think what's interesting, and I don't know if you found this to be true at CanCon, but people still have nightmares about Sentinels, right? You rock up to the table, they see Sentinels, they see a reinforced unit of Sentinels, and the first thing that people think about is, I need to get rid of them. Now, that may not actually need to happen. Like, people still have nightmares of what they used to do, which then means that, you know, your wind chargers, your spirits, your blade lords may not necessarily be picked on, which can be a blessing or a curse. But I always find that really fascinating, that people just have nightmares about certain units, and Sentinels are definitely one of them.
Actually, that's a really good point. And I hadn't really considered it too much, but it does ring 100% true. There is that mental game that you're playing with a unit like Sentinels that have just such a history of being a problem unit. And Lumineth as a whole, as an army, this history of being the problem army and being Games Workshop's baby. They are just that problem unit. And so, and like, it even plays into this mental game that of a change of rules in 4th edition is that when I cast Ethereal Blessing, I have to tell my opponent who it's going on. So if I say I'm casting Ethereal Blessing on my Blade Lords, the opponent might think, oh, okay, it's not going on the Sentinels, I can ignore it. Yeah, I'm gonna save my Unbind for protection of Hysh, because that's gonna protect the Sentinels. When I still wholeheartedly believe you've gotta go for Ethereal Blessing.
It's just like all the mind games as well, like where the people are trying to deploy outside. You don't have the range as you used to, but then that's where the delivery mechanism of Forbidden Power comes in, or people just get so laser focused, like, right, my deployment, I'm going to take first because I want to get into those Sentinels ASAP. Or you can always predict that if someone has long range shooting, they're going to go for the Sentinels first. So you know where that spell has to go, what needs to be buffed. And it's again, this consistency, and it's the predictability of the game, which is like incredibly fun. Maybe one question I've got for you, though, that maybe you weren't predicting, because I don't think a lot of people were predicting, was myself and Joel McGrath going like 5-0 and 4-1, right? And it's not about me introducing myself to the conversation, but one of the questions from Joel Graham, Rocket, had said, how do you tackle Gargants, right? And he said specifically around shifting objectives. And I don't know if we want to go into that very level of detail, but Gargants, this battle scroll, has been a huge boost. There's been a bunch of boosts. You know, myself and Joel have led the charge. I'm sure Gargant's going to come back in a big way. And I know my opponent, Liz, the very first game with Lumineth, she didn't take down a mega. Like, between the Sentinels and the Wind Chargers and the Wind Spirit, like, they were a pincushion, but they survived. And then Gargants just did what Gargants did. So I guess my question to you is, like, how do you handle something like that? Because your Blade Lords with your 2-up Mortal's not going to do a lot to me. Like,
it's actually a really interesting question, and because we're at Sydney GT, I played against Gargants, and I really struggled to bring them down. I got up that game by 1 point, and it was like very much came down to the last die that was cast.
And we want to stay on circles like you do. You're going to move to the table. I'm going to move to the table. We're going to grind it out. I think I grind it out better than you.
I absolutely agree. And I do think that it's like, you can make the argument that Lumineth are, I think, the second best army right now at standing on circles and grinding it out. And so if we go up against the army that's the first best at that, we're going to run into problems. The adjustment that I've been looking at is trying to maybe consider including the Banner Blade, giving all of my units that extra 3 control score. Try and contest it, but then even Gargants, you're looking at these massive control scores that is really hard to compete with. I honestly it's something that I would have to play against and see, but it may just come down to the fact that you need to just all in on a Gargant every turn, or just use the chip shooting that you have in the Riverblade, the Nalania and Elthor, and the Enlightener to maybe try and bait your opponent into using an all-out defense on a Gargant and then shifting focus to the next one.
And it might go back to the conversation you were having about a list adjustment where you've got the twins, but also you may bring in the Light of Lotharian, because that between the shooting that you've got plus those combat threats, plus obviously the 5-up ward or even a 4-up ward, that might be enough to be able to consistently pull down a Gargant, because that's what you need to be doing. If you're going to be facing a Gargant, you've got to be pulling him down like one a turn. And when I look at your list, I'm like, yeah, you probably take me down to half strength, but I don't necessarily think like my War Stomper went straight into Liz's Sentinels, and I killed all but one. There was this one little champion sitting there, but like I killed 19 of the Sentinels in one round of combat. So for me, I just had to pincushion it. Because of prized monster, I don't degrade. I was like, cool, go in there, do the damage, and it's not about me versus Liz, but it's like, how do you handle this problem? And I'm basically forecasting that Gargants are going to come back in a big way. They're going to be a gatekeeper to your tournament moving forward. Consider this in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate the heads up, because I do think that it is a problem army for us, especially when and I love that it's Gargants, because it is Lumineth sitting here as like sitting there flipping off all destruction armies, and then a destruction army comes in and might actually just clown on us.
It makes it interesting. It does make it interesting. It's just again this ever evolving meta. But look, I love the list. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions if you don't mind. Please, Loom. I might just go back to this for a minute. I'll hold that one for now. A question that someone asked, so Sproul had asked, do you build around certain heroes, or do you see them as like a tax to unlocking certain units? I think you've already said the viability and the importance, but anything else you'd add to, the importance of heroes in Lumineth?
Yeah. So I think it comes back to what you said earlier about individual units being like kind of just okay on their own, but when they come together, it's where they really shine. So for me, the heroes that I run are really no-brainers. The Enlightener is an automatic include, because I think Blade Lords are absolutely fire. I think they're better than Wardens in every single way. I think their ceiling is lower, but their floor is way higher, is like the way that I think about them. And the Enlightener gets to take them, so we're all good. I don't have to worry about any sort of slotting in. And the Enlightener is what I need to get Ethereal Blessing going. And then Aligner and Elithor, the other hero that I run, they can take anything, so I do not have to worry about slots at all. And I also am very lucky that they're not a War Master. So if I wanted to flip it and play a more like trying to deny certain battle tactics, Slay the Entourage, I could flip that if I wanted to. Whereas I think that's going on a little tangent. I think that might be what's wrong with going really hard into Alarith, is that a Valinor is a War Master. So it's hard to get your honor guard abilities to line up well, I have found at least. I hope there is someone out there who is making Alarith work, because I want to steal their ideas and run with it. But that's like my philosophy around heroes, is that the two heroes that I run are my favorite heroes in the army. They can run already exactly what I want to run.
Can you put Alarith into a unit, or is it no, you can't. It has to be. It's a monster.
Yeah.
No, it's not a hero. It's not a hero.
So the Alarith Spirit of the Mountain can only go in with Teclis, Aligner and Elithor, Light of Eltharion, a Valinor, and the Alarith Stone Mage.
I was just thinking, like, would this be a good candidate for prized beast, prized monster, prized whatever?
I think so. The +1 to hit is really nice, because I believe it hits on 3s.
Well, the hooves hit on 4s,
right?
But yes, but yes, that the world hammer hits on
the double quarter pounder is like hits on 3. So getting that down to 2s in most situations is really nice. So I think that it's that whole thing of like, we're elves, so we hit on 3s, and getting +1 to that's really, really nice, especially on a unit that isn't feeling the downside of being an elf and wounding on 4s. So I think that it would be a really good candidate for prize beasts. The degrading thing I don't think is that much of a problem for them, because I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they have an ability that prevents them from degrading anyway, as long as they're near the Alarith hero. But that's depending if you're running one of those.
Yeah, the battle damage, the symbiosis, if you're near a Stone Mage.
But that would relay you to run a Stone Mage, and I don't think that would be entirely viable. I don't think they're amazing. I do absolutely think that the Alarith Spirit of the Mountain could be a candidate for prize beast. I was considering doing prize beast on my Fox a couple of times, because it is a monster. That caught me off guard when I first read it. Just for that consistency just to sort of throw people off, and just I was like memeing a little bit in, not at tournament, but in just like some casual games, just trying things out. But Alora Spirit of the Mountain, I think it's definitely a viable option, but I'm waiting for the opportunity to test out various different lists.
Yeah. All right. Rapid fire questions, and then I'm going to bring up your faction rules and we'll go over it in general. What's your favorite unit in Lumineth?
Blade Lords, 100%. No doubt in my mind.
What hammers outside of Sentinels do you think are best in our faction pack?
Wind charges? Kangaroos, 100%. Kangaroos and Sentinels, I think, are the bread and butter of hammers in Lumineth. Partly because of the damage they do, but more so because of that power projection that I was talking about earlier. And to add a little like side tangent, I think that foxes in general are a trap when it comes to damage. I don't think they do that much damage for the amount of points they cost. I always used to say that if I don't run foxes to do damage, I run them to do tactics and to do tricks. If I wanted to run a gun, I'd run the ballistas.
Well, interesting you say that, because one of the questions someone asked was, by the way, all these questions coming from Discord as well, so people much more enlightened than I am. But what are your thoughts on ballistas? It's been a hot minute since I saw some ballistas on the table.
I actually was testing out a list not that long ago that ran 2 of them, and it was very similar to the list I played at CanCon, at Call to Glory, but instead of my Huracan package, I ran an extra hero, 2 ballistas, and then I ran more Blade Lords. So it was really just Castle City. The ballistas, they achieved 2 things for me. They provided a screen that I didn't care about, so they were one of my side screens to protect the Sentinels, and they provided their Shining Bolts ability. Because of a change to Shining Company, I no longer am -1 to hit when I'm on the charge. The Shining Bolts ability of Starshard Ballistas gives me that -1 on the enemy when I'm charging in. So it allows me to maintain the tankiness that I like, even when I'm on the charge. So I do think there is a list out there for them. I don't think it's the best way to play Lumineth. If I was like gunning for a 5-0 or gunning for making a top 8 cutoff, I wouldn't run them in the current state. But I definitely think they are on the trajectory to being much more viable.
110 points, crit 2 hits, anti-monster, making it Ren 2. You mentioned the subtract 1 to hit if someone's been hit by it's only once per battle though, which is kind of annoying.
It is annoying. I'm very interested in the possibility. I don't know if Games Workshop will ever do it, but if they allow us to reinforce them, like reinforce a War Machine, reinforce Starshard Ballistas, I don't think you can reinforce them right now. No. The crit 2 hits is so interesting to me because that would be affected by Power of Hysh, and you would get that crit on 5s. That if we ever get into that situation, that is very interesting to me because the shots are not bad.
It's the efficiency, right? Like it's because you can't get that CP or that spill ability on 2 of them, and I feel like one of them doesn't do a lot. 2 is the sweet spot, but you're investing so much in 2 to make it work. You need that reinforcement efficiency. I can see where you're going with this because it's cool, but if destruction's a really big problem and Gargan's a big problem, this is not the answer. It'll help, but
I think Light of Altherion's the answer. Because into a hero monster, all of his attacks are Ren 3, even the weaker sword. I think he's the answer.
Yeah, you find a point for that over the ballista. Yep. The ballista's cool, but I don't know quietly what role it has over the Sentinels. I don't quite understand why you wouldn't take, unless you weren't investing in Sentinels and you just needed a little chip.
I think that the role that Starshard Ballistas play is that giving you -1 to be hit when you're still on the charge. But I think that's kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face, because if you're charging, your opponent shouldn't get to attack because I fight 2 units at a time. I should be in a situation where it doesn't matter if they have -1.
Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. The abilities are fine, but it's not worth putting these into the list. Maybe a couple of other quick questions, and I'll go into the rules. You've mentioned a lot about your turn 1 battle tactics being seize the center. Is that your go-to? Is that always your turn 1, or do you flex a little into others?
So at Call to Glory, I flexed a lot more than I did in previous events. And the main reason for that was I was running a lot less screens. So I played a lot weaker of a front line at Call to Glory than I normally play. My old front line was 20 Blade Lords and 20 Wardens. I ran a reinforced unit of Wardens at Bathurst GT as well. So I had a really big front line. It took up a lot of room. So I could always get Seize the Center, and most opponents can't get into the Sentinels, even though I've moved up, just because they have to go through the wall. So at Call to Glory, I was definitely doing a lot of different stuff. My other go-to was Reclaim the Realms. Riverblades into one corner. I move up with the Fox and the Kangaroos, shoot, and then split them up and put them into the other corner, and then hero for the other two. You can also very easily get Take the Flanks. You can very easily get Take their land. There is just an entire tablet of options. And so much of it comes down to, if I'm going first and I do this tactic, how much am I going to lose on my opponent's turn and on my opponent's double turn? So I just always assume they're going to get a double turn. And the big question is always, am I going to lose the Riverblades? Is the really big one. Because while they don't do a lot of damage, they score. They just score points so well. And so Reclaim the Realms becomes a really good option when you're against, I want to say particularly Skaven. Because Skaven have that shooting. They can hit you. They can hit you very well. But if they want to get into Riverblades, if they want to get a combat kill on Riverblades, they're not shooting you, which is great. They're not shooting the castle, which is great. And getting into combat with Riverblades when you are an army that has terrain features is really hard. Because I am going to, in the combat phase, I'm going to jump over to that terrain feature and get away from you. Or at least reduce your attacks. And so many times those Riverblades lived on one wound. I teleport them away on my turn, start rallying them, and they keep going.
As in your movement phase. So they've got to,
Yeah.
they've got to lift, or they've got to get out.
Yeah. You got to lift them or ignore them. And ignoring them it feels really bad for the opponent.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, again, like we talked about the Sentinels, but you got so many things like what do you handle? And
yeah,
I think Riverblades are slowly gaining respect from opponents. Right now, it's underwhelming. You're like, oh, what are these things? But then once you've experienced it, like, okay, I got to respect this unit. It's a good unit, and you don't
I think a couple more times when Riverblades are getting into your backline and picking off a foot hero, people are going to realize that it is a surprising amount of damage when they get into a hero for 160 points.
Yeah, the shooting attack's decent. The fact that you've got the anti-hero and a decent amount of attacks, like it's a good little war scroll. It's a very good little war scroll. Maybe a couple of other questions around little war scrolls. Goes without saying, are Stone Guard viable? This will be my last question. Then we'll go to the rules. Like, where we have not talked about Stone Guard at all. Where are they at?
I wish they were, but I just don't think they are. I think that the real thing that kills them for Lumineth is that as Lumineth, your role in the meta and your role in the game is to move fast, be tricky, and be elusive, and 4-inch move doesn't cut it. I think that ignoring a rend is real cool, but you're still on a 4-up save, and Ethereal Blessing does that job better. And a 5-up ward is really cool, but your army has access to that in other ways. I think that, and it's a 5-up ward on objectives that you control, so you can't even be offensive with it. So even the whole field sergeant change was like, oh, maybe we could run Stone Guard at 6-inch move and it'll be good again. And we can give them speed of Hysh and they'll move 10. And my response to that is like, that's really amazing. And that's like a cool idea, but you're losing your 5-up ward by trying to hit your opponent because you're going onto objectives that you don't control yet. So for that combat, your opponent's going to be able to hit you pretty hard. Whereas if I am walking around with my Blade Lords, who are only 20 points more expensive per 5-man, I am getting that 5-up ward full time. And because I'm running an Enlightened with them, my save is even better. And I'm also -1 to be hit. Like, Stone Guard are meant to be this standstill wall, really tanky, but all of the things that make them tanky are accessible elsewhere in the army. They're slower than the rest of the army. And the thing that makes the rest of the army tanky, the -1 to be hit, doesn't affect them. And I say rest of the army, I'm not including Huracan units. I'm talking about Venari.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a reason. I was even trying to think like, oh, what if I put 5 on a home objective? I'm like, wait a second, I just got 20 Sentinels. Like they can sit on a home objective and just do a better job and add more value than trying to protect an objective that's worth 4 if you stand on it. Like, yeah, like I don't quite know the role. Like I was trying to think like, right, I'm really excited about Stone Guard. They're my favorite unit. I love things with big hats with horns. How do I use it? And look, the combat profile's decent. But you're right, like to get them into combat properly, you are sacrificing that 5-up ward, and that might be the right time to strike them. And then how many's left?
Yeah, I mean, the 2 damage is real nice. Especially the army is a lot of 1 damage stuff, so having 2 damage is really nice. But at the end of the day, you're sacrificing so much tankiness, and tankiness is meant to be their job.
I can see that. Like I'm looking at it, I'm like, you've just got other units that I'd rather over Stone Guard. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, Stone Guard, but I don't see the rules.
I'll turn my light on if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it. I love the mood lighting that you've done. So there's a heap.
I'm not Leon.
I mean, I love it. It's just like the bad mood is setting into. I mean, it's actually you should be having all the light. This is Hysh, right?
This is Hysh.
Yeah, unless you're the Gip mob, man, we love the sun as well, man. Like, look at this. I'm basically Lumineth with my soul. Look at that.
I'm
the
so
sun.
excited.
The sun is coming. The sun is here, baby. All right. So let's talk about this, right? So you've given me a really good context of your list and what worked for you, right? But when you look at, say, your battle traits, and this is the fascinating one, right? Because it's not like the olden days where you picked a bunch of units and you just built around it. You've got way more flexibility. And you mentioned the move like the wind has changed a little bit. You know, my opponent Liz, I got to see a whole bunch of things. I got to see Power of Hysh, I got to see Shining Company, I got to see Move Like the Wind. I even got to see Deep Thinkers play out, right? How do you, as a Lumineth player, look at these facets of war and make the most of it? Like, are some of these a trap? Are these influencing your list building? Like, talk to me about your rules.
Yep, that absolutely influences the list building. From the ground up, I think that I don't think we're in an era anymore. We talked about 4 or 5 months ago when Lumineth were building around a bunch of Huracan units, Dawn Riders, Riverblades. I think back then you wouldn't do Shining Company as much. Nowadays, Shining Company is your auto take every turn. I think that, especially with the way that I play, being -1 to hit is everything to my army. And I am predominantly Venari units. Alani or an Elithor are Venari. So they're -1 to be hit on top of the Lookout Sirs and Guarded Hero and stuff like that. So Shining Company just makes the army as tanky as it is. Without it, it's entirely different. The changes to it are really interesting to me. I think the changes make Power of Hysh not as viable anymore. And I think there is a reason, we'll get into battle formations pretty soon. I think there's a reason that Shining Company is the one facet of war here that doesn't have a battle formation tied to it. I think GW were fully aware when they made them that people are going to be picking Shining Company all the time. If there was a battle formation that gave me Shining Company, I would take it every single time because then I could switch between the other ones, and the other ones are less good. I think Move Like the Wind I think if you've got more than 1 Huracan unit, you're going to be in Huracan Temple just because of how good Move Like the Wind is. The list that I'm testing out right now has only 1 Huracan unit. So I'm running the Deep Thinkers battle formation to get that +1 to cast on the 3 wizards that I have. Because I'm running the same wizards plus a Cathalar. And just having that consistency on their casting, really helpful. Like I said before, I think the change to Shining Company hurts Power of Hysh. I also don't think there are many good Power of Hysh targets. I think Dawn Riders are the only real one. Getting the crit 5 on the Sentinel's shooting feels great, but I don't think it converts to that much damage. The crit auto wound, I mean, it gets around your 4-up, but at the end of the day, in most situations, because a lot of our battle plans, the objectives are all quite close to each other. At the end of the day, most of the time you're hitting on 2s with Sentinels because they're my all-out attack target. And so I don't really have to worry about, because I'm getting through such a large number of hits that because I've got 41 attacks, the extra 5 or 6 auto wounds that I get don't really end up having much consequence, or wouldn't really end up having much consequence. And giving up the -1s a hit makes it feel really bad. So I do think Dawn Riders are the only really good choice for Power of Hysh. Again, we've talked about Alaric units. Enduring as a Rock is a trap. I wish it was good. I wish Stone Guard were good.
Can I ask you though one question before we go to battle formation? Because when I look at these rules, right, if I'm a Lumineth player, I feel like there's I don't want to call it a trap because I don't know if it's a trap yet. If I look at I really love Shining Company, right? I love this rule. I really want to make the most of this Shining Company. Do you think that it's a trap or it's a good idea to just go all in or build as much Venari as possible to make the most of Shining Company? Or do you think that it's good to have the flexibility to go, right, well, a lot of my army might be Venari, but I'm going to have a 30 or 40% pocket of, Hurricane or Alarith, or put different war scrolls to be able to respond either at different parts of the battle round, depending on what I need, or as the battle's going, I can lean into another part.
I think for people trying Lumineth for the first time, it's a good way to get used to the army is to be like, okay, I'm going to go into these battle traits and these strategies that I know will be consistent and work. And the improvement level comes from, or the experience level will develop in a way that you are able to use Shining Company better with less units by putting your opponent in situations where they have to attack the things that have Shining Company. So moving in a way, doing battle tactics in a way, putting obstacles in your opponent's way that force them to be playing into that -1s a hit, and that will let you take more and more and more non-Venari.
So I guess at minimum, right, like if I was going heavy Venari, I would still have a bunch of wizards for deep thinkers. I would still definitely have lightning reflexes. So that's probably an easier way between lightning reactions, Power of Hysh, Shining Company, and deep thinkers. There'd be enough.
Yeah.
But obviously you could go like Banner Blade and the Lord Regent and have no wizards, but you're probably going to have some Scenari wizards at some point.
So I think for me, it started out as when 4th edition started, I looked at this and I thought about, okay, I'm going to be playing Deep Thinkers because I want to play my Scenari heroes. Scenari works really well with being defended by Venari. So I was like, okay, Deep Thinkers, Shining Company, and Lightning Reactions are the only battle traits that Lumineth have. I just ignored everything else. But this is all I play. And then I've stepped into using Move Like the Wind. That's what I've been doing over the past 2 or 3 months. So I played the Deep Thinkers one. Because the big thing that stood out for me was Alania and Elithor having the Venari keyword and the Scenari keyword. So they benefit from both. So them having that was really nice for me. And because it leaned into that kind of strategy really well. And that's where I started with this defensive playstyle, was like, okay, Blade Lords are sick because they have a synergy with Scenari. So they have the Venari keyword, and then they get their ward save from Scenari. So there's a natural synergy that I'm going to use to sort of build a foundation of a list. And then I traded having that +1 to cast eventually for, I'm going to take 2 Huracan units and be able to move them around a bit.
Yeah, so you've now got a bunch of tools now between the 3.
And I absolutely think you can play Huracan units without Move Like the Wind. You just need to play much more defensively. You just need to be careful. I think especially with Foxes, because Foxes are far more fragile than you think they are when you can't move them after they shoot. Kangaroos not so much, because it is 30 wounds. It's a thing to bite. It's a lot of wounds there. But kangaroos can fall really quickly if they get caught.
Yeah, I caught my opponent with a really good countercharge, and I think they mostly died. I think maybe there was 1 left from the combat. So positioning, making sure that you shoot at the furthest spot possible, and then get out of the ASAP, and you deny even the ability to countercharge, because you're right. Once I catch you, good luck, because you're going to disappear.
Yeah, and one thing that I've tried to really get good at with my positioning is when I make that first move, because my movement back is 2d6, it's random. So I am kind of worried. So I try to put myself in a position where in most situations, depending on what I roll, my Huracan units are going to be wholly within 12 of my Enlightener. Because with Masterful Tactician, I've got a minimum 4 redeploy. So if you do try to get to them, I'm going to add 4 inches to that charge. I'm likely that distance will likely mean that I'm in range to give you half movement. So there's all these it's the units coming together and the rules coming together. All these stack of effects that make it more difficult for the opponent.
That's right. You just reminded me. I hate that manifestation. Is it was it the Twin Stones? No.
Oh, no, I was talking about the Overwhelming Heat, the spell.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You're thinking of Rune of Petrification, which is out last.
That was so annoying. It was chip damaging me, and it was making me fight. It was so annoying.
Good amount of damage on that thing. It's a
second most annoying manifestation at Call to Glory. Number 1 was Flesh Eater Court's Fence. That straight up was so annoying. And then Rune of Petrification, second most annoying.
Rune of Petrification is the Gentleman's Soul Snare Shackles.
I just couldn't get rid of it. It's so annoying. But you get your battle formations. I think the cool thing is there's not a lot of complexity, right? So, it just means that you've got way more flexibility on which facet of war you can take. And I guess then it rewards you. If you're going Venari Scenari, it means you can tap into 2 abilities, or it just gives you more flex, right? So which ones do you think are the stronger ones? I assume what? Venari Scenari?
Huracan Temple and Scenari Council is, in my opinion, best. So it's all about the battle traits. So if you believe like me that you're always going to pick Shining Company as the one that you actually pick, and then your battle formation is going to give you your second one. If you're wanting to play that hit and run, you take Huracan Temple so you can move like the wind. And if you're playing a good amount of heroes and you want that consistency of your casts, especially when it comes to magical intervention, you go Scenari Council so that you always have +1 to cast on everyone. Or almost everyone. You might be running a wizard outside of Scenari. Again, I don't think Power of Hysh is that good outside of Dawn Riders. So it is very much, these formations are very much, what am I running? And I'm going to pick the one that fits. So if I am running Dawn Riders, if I'm running a 10-man or 2 10-mans, I'm probably going to take Venari Battle Host to give it to them and then go ham. If I'm in a situation where I'm running the Battle Cattle, the Beefer of Secrets, I will probably run the Alareth Temple and take that reduction of rend to all of my Alareth units all the time. But the interesting thing shows up when you're looking at these things when you think about Teclis lists, because Teclis doesn't have any of the keywords, and neither does Light of Eltharion. So they're unaffected by these rules. So you're thinking if you're dedicating 600 points, or in Light of Eltharion's case, 230 points to something that's unaffected, how do you build the rest of your list to consider what you're going to take?
And I guess because Shining Company, you can't get through the battle formation. Really, the starting point is like, right, I most likely want to use Shining Company. Then what else do I need? What's more valuable to my list? Is it Deep Thinkers and I'm trying to get the Cron Spine out, or, I'm trying to spam, Morbid? Is it more that I need the movement shenanigans from Huracan? Is it more like, what is it that I need? So I think it's a good starting point, not to start with, right, I'm running a Huracan list, so let's think about that. No, it's Shining Company, and then what else?
I think that Venari build the baseline of every Lumineth list. I don't think it's really possible to build a consistent and strong Lumineth list without a wall of Venari. Like, I don't think you need Sentinels. I think Sentinels can be missed in certain lists, but I think a front line of Blade Lords or a front line of Wardens is kind of vital in every Lumineth list. And -1 to hit on that is bread and butter.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good. What about your heroic traits? So you clearly chose silver. So heroic traits. I'm looking at a different screen. Heroic traits. You had Perfect Strike, Paragon of Hysh, and Masterful Tactician. You chose Masterful Tactician. Are the other two good, or do you think that Masterful Tactician is just the standout?
I think Masterful Tactician is an absolute standout here. I think that if you're castling and you're playing in this idea of denying tactics, a 4 redeploy can be night and day. And talking about the other two, I think Perfect Strike is really interesting But I think at the end of the day, D3+3 is not that much damage. And that's not going to save a hero. And it's less damage than the majority of our heroes can just do. Like, our foot wizards are actually kind of can do damage. Because we all hit on 3s and wound on 3s or 4s. So it's like they can kind of hit. And so D3+3 isn't going to cut it. Especially because when I first read this, I didn't realize it had the attack keyword. So it has to go in attack sequence. You have to use one of your combats to do this, and then that hero doesn't get to attack later. When I originally read it, I thought it was just a combat ability, and I just got to do this at the start of combat. And it was really cool, and it was really interesting, but no, that's not the case. And then Paragon of Hysh, re-rolling that charge or casting roll. Re-rolling a casting roll is a hat on a hat. You already have a re-roll cast from your shrine. And re-rolling a charging roll, I think, is also a hat on a hat. You have the command points, because Lumineth is an army that is not very hungry for their command points. I think it's one of their biggest strengths. Because we have so many crit, auto wound, and we have so many ways to consistently get damage through, we don't really use Power of Hysh. We don't really use all-out attack, rather. And because we have Ethereal Blessing, we don't really use all-out defense. In some situations I will, but very rarely. So you just do happen to have lots of command points left over. So you have the reroll for the charge if you need it. So I think Paragon of Hysh is kind of a miss. So Masterful Tactician is what we're left with, and it just happens to be really goddamn good.
Yeah, especially if you're playing the Hurricane units, even just guaranteeing the 4, right?
Yeah.
If Perfect Strike was like end of combat, like a purple ability, I actually wouldn't hate that, because at least then you can get yourself out of combat. It's almost like a power through that most of Lumineth's not going to be doing. But to sacrifice it in combat and be a once per battle,
yeah, it's like if your heroes are if your tiny little heroes that are going to get this ability are in combat, you're already in a bad situation. I'd rather take the ability that helps them stay out of combat.
And at worst case, you do 4 damage. Like, that's not getting you out.
No,
like that's not getting you out. So I think it's fair. I think this is the one that's more interesting that I was going to, because I have seen a few people play with the Phoenix Stone. I have seen some people play with the Waystone. I know you have a preference towards the Silver Wand. And definitely it's like building into the wizard ability. Do you think this is more equally matched, or again, is there a standout?
I think it is equally matched. I think Silver Wand is absolutely the standout. I think that because when I look at the Enlightener as a hero, Ethereal Blessing is a must. And then Speed of Hysh is an amazing spell, and Protection of Hysh is nice to get. So those are 3 spells that are just really amazing, all 3 of them. So having her be Wizard level 3 is really great. The Waystone is the other one that I actually think is really good. And I would take the Waystone before I took Phoenix Stone. I think that removing the battlefield, setting them up anywhere is really incredible. I think that because there's very often a moment where my opponent has hit me, my walls are down, I'm exposed, I'm going to lose my hero, my Enlightener. I was like, I could keep them alive for another turn, and they could score me a battle tactic, and that's their last ditch ever. They score me 4 points, or they get an objective and score me 6 points. Just get them over there. And it's really, really nice, and it works really well. I do have an issue with the fact that it has the spell keyword, because now it's using up one of my casts. That's really annoying to me. And it's like, it's movement phase, so it uses up one of my casts, and that means I have to not cast in the hero phase, because I believe that's the way the rules work, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, it's not spell, it's core. Sorry, that's me. That's my
Oh, okay.
So ignore no, ignore me. I'm gonna fix it up right now on screen. It's core, not spell. Sorry, that's me using a template. That didn't seem right. I'm like, why would it be so? I don't remember now, but because that's no. I just looked at the artifact. It's a core. It's a core move.
Cool.
It's a core move.
Yeah. So like, it's that little thing where it's like, okay, my hero's gonna die on my opponent's next turn. Them sitting here in what used to be my castle isn't gonna do anything. Odds are I've already lost the home objective because my opponent's broken my castle. So they may as well go do something for me. That's what the Waystone does. Phoenix Stone is the same idea, where it's like, okay, I could lose my castle, lose my hero, and then keep my hero. The issue with that is that once you keep your hero, what are they going to do? they're gonna cast a spell and then die again. The Lord Regent is like interesting to consider that on. I think he could be kind of good at it because he is a bit of a slappy hero. He makes your Dawn Riders better. And so if you haven't used his ability yet to make them better, you definitely want to keep that. I think if we see a lot of shooting armies come out that can take out heroes in like a first turn, Phoenix Stone is going to see a massive increase. But I mean, the solution to that for the Lumineth player is more just, okay, I'm going to make sure that my heroes are at least 9 inches from my front line. Because now they just can't be hit at all because of guarded hero. Got the 9 inches, 3-inch combat range from the front line. They're fine. They're safe. I think Phoenix Stone is only really good in a situation where you know your hero is going to get picked off really early. And so I'm not really that into it. I just think Silver Wand is, again, really consistent.
Yeah, like I'm thinking, like, what wizards would I need? Also, not wizards, what heroes would I need on the Phoenix Stone on? I mean, maybe if I'm going like Lord Regent and I'm going all in on Dawn Riders and I've got way more like in threat range.
Yeah, and that's
otherwise
the cast, so you want that, like, you want it to be alive. But
outside of that, like, a lot of them are relatively easy to protect. So, yeah, I probably tend to agree with you with a few exceptions.
And like Waystone is like, you hear this idea about a Lore Seeker with Waystone Perfect Strike, and then they can be away from your army at the start of the game, and they kind of do the Changeling thing where they are that roadblock, and then if they live, they just Waystone out. And I think it's a nice idea, but I think that it sort of is a divergent path from what I think the army wants to do. And I'd rather spend 160 points on Riverblades who teleport every turn without the Waystone.
I'm just trying to think, like, where would I use a Waystone? Because, again, a lot of your heroes are very defensive, very squishy.
Yep.
Maybe it's to get me out of combat. I was just thinking, like, what offensive ability? Because like, if I needed to teleport around the board, as you've said, you've got really good hero access for Longchin. So that doesn't take an artifact. Anyway, like, I'm trying to think. I think Silver Wand clearly is the winner here. I think it's hard to...
If you're really desperate for a teleport like that, you can run a Wind Mage, whose War Scroll spell is a teleport that can target your heroes.
While we're talking heroes, can I just say how disappointed I am? When I saw this unit as a model, I got super excited. I'm an old world player as well. I love my battle standard bearers. BSBs are goats. Like, every army must have a BSB. The Banner Blade is one of the most disappointing units. Like, I look at this and go, oh, yay, I get +3 to control score.
Nah, I'm going to disagree with you here. I know you're a Gargant player, so you see +3 to control score and you laugh. But I think there's a Teclis list out there that is really good, and I'm trying to figure it out and make it work. And I think the Banner Blade is going to be a really key piece of it, because if you have less models on the board, the Banner Blade is so much better.
No, why I'm laughing, not laughing, but I'm sad, is like, I compare it to what I was playing for the first half of this season, which was Stormcast, where I took the Vexillor, and the Vexillor not only gives me the +3 control score for D3 units, but I also get to heal those units as well. So like the +3 control score is nice, but I'm like, and what else?
Yeah,
I do. It's like I feel like there's just something missing from, like, I need a little bit extra, a little bit something.
I thought that as well, and then I played it, and I realized just how large Wholly Within 18 is. And it's just so big, especially when you put him in the Shrine, and it gets even bigger, because the Shrine is big. Really extends out. So I do agree with you that it was definitely underwhelming and disappointing. And then I played with it, and I realized that, like, my 10-man Wardens don't need to get in combat to outscore someone in most situations. If they're just, like, towing an objective, I'm much more consistently getting on there. And you've also got to consider that most Lumineth Realm Lord units, most Venari units, don't have banner bearers. Like, Wardens don't, Sentinels don't, Blade Lords don't. So I'm not getting the +1 for that every other unit in the game is getting.
Wardens don't have one.
Nope. Wardens don't have one. They also don't have a musician. There's no musicians in Lumineth at all.
I don't think I've ever
High
noticed that.
elves, high elves don't play instruments.
Musician, I don't care less. But I would have, I would have assumed that you'd have a banner. I don't think I've ever noticed that. I guess you've got like 3-inch bloody poles. Like, surely you can put a little flag on one of them.
I know, right? It's the 2 cavalry units and Alarith Stone Guard have banners and no one else does.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. I mean, I want to see the banner blade in more lists. I feel like it's just missing that little something. It's not that I don't like the world banner. I just feel like it needs something a little bit extra, just a little bit more.
I do agree.
Maybe like a magical banner, like Saves the Darkness. Give yourself an ensorcel set of banners. Like, surely there's something from the various nations you can get a little.
I just think he needs to be a wizard. Wizard 1, and he's good.
Okay. I mean, you just told me he was great, but here we are.
I do think he's great. But if you want something more, make him a wizard.
No, I want him dead. Cool. All right. Move along. 130 points. I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need. If I don't need that heat, I don't need +3 control score. Speaking of heat, look, these spells are great, and I don't think I need to talk much about the spell lore. What I do want to probably talk, I mean, unless you can talk a little bit about it in a second, but one question that I had was, where was it? Who is it that duplicates spells? Is it the
Enlightened?
Yes. Yeah. I had a question come out around which of the spells do you think, what is the best spell to duplicate on the scenario Enlightener? Is it Speed of Hysh, Ethereal Blessing, or Overwhelming Heat?
I've talked a lot about Ethereal Blessing, and then I think it's just the absolute nutter butters. But it really comes down to the situation that you're in. I think that I've been in situations where that extra 4-inch of movement gets me my battle tactics. So getting the double on that, really amazing. So, and when it comes to Overwhelming Heat, I think it really depends on if you're in your turn or your opponent's turn. Because I've been in situations where the first Overwhelming Heat is going to deny a battle tactic. I'm going to slow something down. They're not going to be able to do Slay the Entourage or take the flanks or whatever. But that second one is going to stop them from getting that second unit in combat with me and hitting me really hard. I think that the most consistent answer is Ethereal Blessing. I think it's the most important to get off twice, especially if you're running 2 screens. I think that, and even if you're not running 2 screens, getting Ethereal Blessing on the Sentinels makes them way tankier than they should be. Same with Riverblades. Same with Alania and Elafor. Just chucking it on them, giving them a 4-up Ethereal. I know that back in 3rd edition, they were like the only good target for Ethereal Blessing because they had a 3-up save. And so getting that set up and getting that defensive set up, I think is just really important. To put like an actual useful answer on the question, rather than just saying all of them are great, it really depends on what stage in the strategy I'm at. So with my strategy is sitting there and being tanky and then worrying about stopping tactics and getting my own. So if I'm already tanky, or if my opponent's not going to hit me this turn, I can move to the other ones down the list of which ones are more important. But generally it's Ethereal Blessing because my first priority is being tanky.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense to me. Can you duplicate Protection of Hysh?
You can, but there's no point. Oh, sorry, you can't. And you can't because there would be no point.
Yeah, I was just rereading. I'm like, oh, while it's wholly within 12, so it's an aura. For some reason I was thinking it was like 0.5 up ward. No, it's because it's the aura.
No, it's everyone.
And and because it's not 5 up, 5 up, it's not like you can stack wards. So no, ignore me. I should learn how to read. That's why I'm a Gargant player and that's why I play Murder Stripper elves, not fancy pants hat hell elves.
Yep. Well, like if they can't handle it, your Unga, they don't deserve you at your Bunga. Like it's that Unga Bunga gameplay.
I play Daughters, man. We just stab. No, that makes perfect sense to me. Cool. I'm like, why can't you do Protection of Hysh? Oh wait, Anthony should read. Learn to read. Learn to read. And the same thing is you can't duplicate manifestations. So at least I got ahead of that one slightly. You've gone Forbidden Power. My opponent went Manifestations of Hysh. Where do you think Manifestations of Hysh stand right now in regards to? Yeah, I mean, like they're 3 decent spells. You know, obviously the Twin Stones are very good.
Yes. they are. So my take on the manifestations of Hysh is that there's two of them that are really good, and if you're running a list that is going to cast them, you're going to cast them every single turn. And then there is one that, to make it good, you need to run a unit that's not good. So if you want to make Sanctum of Amentok good, you need to be playing the Law Seeker, in my opinion. And he is just not a good model. So I just don't run that one. Rune of Petrification, you were saying you really hated playing against it. It's really annoying. It's really strong. I think that Strike's Last ability is really good. Like I said before, I think it fits a similar role that Soul Snare Shackles does. And then Twin Stones is amazing just for that consistency I've been talking about. Having your first spell be Twin Stones, it makes all your other spells easier to cast. Really, really great. But none of them are... They're all centered around this idea of... It's that divergent path that I was talking about. Twin Stones makes you more consistent, and that's really, really nice, because I've been talking about consistency nonstop. Yeah, but Rune of Petrification helps you stay alive and stay tanky. It's that consistency as well. And it's that little bit of chip damage that you love. But at the end of the day, I think that if you wanted to run Rune of Petrification, Soul Snare Shackles does a better job. Less movement, I think, is just better than the Strike's Last.
And
especially
you control more of the board.
Yep. And I think the Strike's Last only really happens on the 5 or the 6, whereas you always get the movement while you're doing damage. And Sun is great with your shooting. I think that you're one of the best armies with Maelstrom. Because not only because we have the number of casts to get it up really high, we also have good shooting. So I can cast it last, and then on my next turn, send it in to power it with shooting attacks into other units, and then blow it up. And we also have 5-up wards. So if it happens to blow up in our face, we're going to take some damage, but not as much as anyone else would. And the last one in Morbid Conjuration is Gravetide. Gravetide's just amazing. So I don't think there's any... I think Sanctum isn't very good in Manifestation of Hysh. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with Twin Stones or Rune of Petrification. It's just that the lore as a whole isn't as good. Like, if I could take, say, Morbid Conjuration, but swap out Maelstrom for Rune of Petrification, I absolutely would every single day of the week. Because I think Rune of Petrification is really great, and it fits that style, but I can't. So if I want to run Rune of Petrification, I have to run the other two Manifestations of Hysh, and I don't think as a group they're as good as Morbid Conjuration, and I think that Forbidden Power is just way too good. I wholeheartedly believe that Forbidden Power is the best manifestation lore right now. I think that if you're running a shooting unit that can't retreat and shoot naturally, it is an auto take. I think that people should be running... I don't think Forbidden Power goes in every list. I don't think it's as universally good as Primal Energy or Morbid Conjuration. But I think that it is better at what it does more than they are good at what they do.
Yes, and a few things I'll retort with. One, Rune of Petrification was annoying to me because I couldn't roll the 7-up, and my opponent kept rolling the 6 damage, or the 3 damage, sorry, the 6s, right? So, but again, Gargants don't care if they strike last. I'm like, okay, cool, you can like stab me in my toe, and I'm still going to wallop you with a big weapon. So even when it happened, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was more that I couldn't roll the 7 for my life, and I've only got one unbind. I'm like, come on, man. Hit this stupid 7. So like it was annoying for me. But you're also right. Like, you know, if I was playing another faction, Forbidden Power was fine. But when you look at armies that have a supercaster like you guys, like Krondis, there's a bunch of those factions who have really good magic. Forbidden Power is definitely a sleeper. But then also you're right. Primal's still really good. There's a few of them that are like gotten up. It just depends on what your power levels are and how many you can cast. And you with someone definitely can take. Like, who do I want as Soul Screen Bridge? Well, I can use it as a screen, or the Sentinels are a perfect thing to deliver.
What's been becoming really popular that I've been seeing a lot in TTS and people have it like saved to just paste it into the perfect position, is using Soul Screen Bridge to seize the center by putting them in a position so that way from where your opponent's coming, there's no way, including pile-ins, for them to get in within 3 of the center without taking off the bridge with shooting attacks. And not every army has the shooting output to deal that 12 damage.
It's a lot of wounds. A lot of wounds. Yeah, and that's a smart play, right? You can play offensively and defensively, and it's very big bases. So I can see where you're going with it. Yeah, and I mean, like, Aether wrought machinery. There's a couple of things, but again, it's almost like the twin stones. Like, do you really need cogs?
I like cogs in a Teclis list to give him -1 to be hit. But if I'm going to a tournament, that is me. Doing that is like, okay, I'm going to play against shooting every single round, because that's like, if Teclis is getting in combat, I've already made a mistake. I've already messed up. If I'm running cogs to try and protect Teclis, I am betting on running into shooting every single round.
Perfect segue, because that's literally what I wanted to talk about. I feel like, as we start wrapping up, before we jump into this beautiful war scroll, Kronspine, you didn't quite talk about that, and I don't know if you think it's hot garbage in Lumineth, or it's just where you stand with this one.
I'm actually, you're right. I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't bring it up, because I ran Kronspine with my Lumineth at Bathurst GT when I went 5-0 there, and he was brilliant. I found that he was, again, talking about that solution to not having very good rend. Kronspine was a fantastic solution to that. I think that it's one of those things where if you're running a certain wizard, you'll run Kronspine. In the same way that if you're running Teclis, you're going to run the big manifestation laws that have 4 of them. If you're running Kronspine, you're going to run the Caligrave to always get Kronspine.
I was going to ask you, is that one wizard specifically the Caligrave, because of that once per turn summon, change it to the casting roll of 8 that can't be modified.
Yep, absolutely phenomenal. Means you always get Kronspine, even on the magical intervention. Really good defensive piece. If my opponent's going first, they're like, oh, I'm going to kill this unit of Blade Lords as my battle tactic or whatever. Chuck out Kronspine. Put it right in front of the Blade Lords. If
the magical intervention call is really good, like that's a really good one, because if you're going second, cool. I know for a fact, guaranteed, it's on the table, and then in my turn, I can start moving it and go do its thing.
Yeah, and he's just, I mean, like the Caligrave went up points. He's what, like 160 now. He was 150 or 140 before. I was very sad about that. Absolutely deserved. That Realm Scribe is a phenomenal ability. I think it's one of the best single abilities in Lumineth Realm Lords.
Because that can guarantee you Purple Sun. That can guarantee you.
It guarantees you Bridge. I'm trying to fit him into my Sentinels lists so I can guarantee Soul Screen Bridge. And because then there's like no point in going into the Sentinels in combat unless you're going to wipe them out.
There's no manifestation that's a 9, is there?
I don't believe so. I believe Kronspine is the hardest to cast at 8.
And
Purple Sun.
Yeah, so basically,
even the 9.
Yeah, so basically that rule is saying free endless spell.
Yeah, every turn.
Yeah, like pretty close to, right? Like, because you can still unbind it, but yeah, it just can't be modified. So especially magical intervention, that's a guaranteed 1 CP, free manifestation, the end.
And you get to see your roll beforehand. So if you happen to roll higher, you just don't use the ability and you go with it. And the unmodified is really great because that means it still works on intervention. You're not being affected by the -1.
You don't have to go. You don't have to go chasing place of power either. So
yeah.
Talk to me about old mate here. Old very good father to our Seas brethren.
Oh, not a good very father to anyone really. Like top 3 bad dads in lore.
Where's Tyrion? Where's Tyrion?
I'm still waiting. Still looking at my watch, waiting for Tyrion.
I'll be honest, Jacob. I expected Tyrion out by now. I don't know why he's not out, but I thought that Tyrion and his friends would have been out way earlier than this. Like, where is Tyrion?
my prediction is that we're not going to see him till 5th. Because I think the Lumineth release in this edition is going to be all about the Riverblades and their tribe, and then we're going to get Tyrion later. That's like my prediction. I'm like half saying that just to like not get myself too excited and just to,
I could see Malekith or Malarian versus Tyrion bringing in some shitstorm between the elves. So and old mate here is 600 points. Old archmate Teclis.
Yep,
a lot of points. But also not that much points. Like, it's not Nagash points. It's not Archaon points. It's not Marathi points. Like, 600 is still fair.
I think it's entirely fair. I think he's really fairly costed. I think he tips on the side of being really good. I think that, again, we talk about it being all about consistency. Wizard 4, everything casts on a 10. There's not much plus to unbind in 4th edition. So those 4 spells are almost always going off. I think Storm of Searing White Light is really incredible. In an edition where a lot of the damaging spells, especially AoE damaging spells, had their ranges reduced, Storm stayed at 18-inch range. And Teclis' base is big, so that 18 inches is hitting a lot of stuff every turn. +1 to cast for all your other wizards. So if you're running other wizards to try and like add some tech to your list, he's really helpful for that. He has Roar. He's decently tanky. And the big thing that I really like about this War Scroll is Wizard 4 and always unbinds on an 8 and banishes on an 8 if you want him to.
All right, so I'm going to pause you there for a second because, you know, you're very high on Teclis. You think Teclis is fairly pointed. Well, obviously everyone wants their models cheaper, but, you know, you don't think that it's a blowout. I guess the couple of questions then is, we are in an age where we have superheroes, right? Like, we are going low drops. People are finding the Cronduses, the Marathis, the Archaons, the Bellicors, the insert generic massive cool hero here. Teclis is very, very flexible with these regiment options. Will take up almost 1/3 of your army, so you can go 1 drop pretty easily if you wanted to go that way. Why on earth don't we see many Teclises in, if any, and especially of the Lumineth lists that are doing relatively well? It doesn't seem like Teclis is actually featured in those lists. So what's going on? What's being missed? Why is Teclis not being featured as he used to be in 3rd?
I think I honestly don't really have that much of an answer other than I think we're just waiting for the right person to figure it out. I don't think that person's going to be me. I think someone else is going to have a light bulb moment where they put the pieces of the puzzle together and it works. But I said a lot earlier that Lumineth is not an army that... I don't think that Lumineth is an army anymore that is playing Index War Scroll, Age of War Scrolls and War Scroll Hammer, where you pick one really good War Scroll and you just run like 30 of them. When it's an army that puts all the pieces together and makes something crazy out of those pieces. And when you have Teclis take up so much of that space, it can really restrict your other options. So I think that it's just about putting the right pieces together, and someone will do it eventually. And then they will just have a crazy tournament and they'll kick ass.
Because the strategy, like, I was just having a look at like Protection of Hysh, right? One of the most common strategies with Teclis was the auto Protection of Hysh, massive base, ward of everyone, come at me, bro. And, you know, you'd be pretty survivable. That is still achievable. Like, you could still do that same type of thing.
I think when someone does pull off Lumineth, it's going to be, when someone does pull off Teclis rather, it's going to be a list of Teclis, lots of Wardens, lots of Sentinels, and 1 or 2 techie heroes. Like, I see a baseline, a General's Regiment of Archmage Teclis, a Banner Blade to give you Field Marshal, or Field Sergeant, I keep saying Field Marshal, Field Sergeant, 40 Wardens, 20 Sentinels. I see a General's Regiment of that, and then another regiment that's probably Huracan, that is doing something techie. Probably a Wind Mage and some Kangaroos to try and give you some movement. And then, if you can, slip a Riverblade in. If you can't, you can't. That's what, like, I'm seeing. And so what you have is this massive amount of Wardens that are all getting the 5-up ward every single time. And I talked a lot about Blade Lords earlier and how you have that consistency of always having the 5-up ward. When you run Teclis, you can go Wardens instead and get the benefit that Wardens bring and still have the 5-up ward. And it really works for them. Because you're running Wardens and because you're running Teclis, who's already forecasts, you don't really want to run Ethereal Blessing because you're paying a lot of points for your Wizards at that stage. That's 800 points of Wizards if you have to run the Enlightener and Teclis. So you've got this massive wall of Wardens that's going to be really hard to chew through with Teclis behind them. And every round that my opponent doesn't get through those Wardens, Teclis is going to cast Storm of Searing White Light twice and deal a lot of damage. That's every single unit in my opponent's army likely getting hit with those D3 mortal wounds.
I'm seeing a lot in common here between Teclis and Krondys. They're similar points, similar type of unit. Teclis is a little bit better with magic. Krondys is a little bit better in combat. Teclis has a ward. Krondys doesn't have a ward. And if you do want a ward, you're getting a bunch of Praetors in. So now you're jacking up the points close to 800. I'm just wondering, what's missing? What is it that Teclis is missing that Krondys has been able to tap into in Stormcast that is it the fact we just haven't found the right list? Is it the fact that because Hurricane is way more popular than it's ever been, Teclis doesn't reward that play style of expansive, high movement? You're not in this castle type of General's Handbook where, you do have sometimes 8 objectives or you have shifting objectives. So to be able to move around the board does not play in the space of Teclis. Is that, my gears are turning right now and I'm trying to work out why this particular superhero isn't seeing play in decent competitive lists as much as all the other superheroes. Because almost if you think about them, Marathi's seeing play, Be'lakor, like Glocken, you name it, they're all being played.
I think that now that I think about it more and more, and you bring up the missions, which I think is a really important part of the puzzle, is this idea behind that all of the other superheroes have this ability to show up and just hit something off objectives and push people out of objectives. And you can build around them an army that takes objectives really well. And while Lumineth can take objectives really well when there's no one on them, Lumineth aren't as good at taking objectives when they're being defended. And so we've got the speed to get around your army, but not to go through it. And I think that Teclis doesn't really solve that problem. You look at Be'lakor, he can surround himself with Varangard, who are going to punch through. Archaon can do a similar thing. So can Marathi can do it with Witch Elves and Snakes and really punch through. And the versatility, the movement, and the output of Stormcast really lend to Krondys' ability to get that punch through. You could make the exact same argument for Kragnos. And so all of these superheroes, they have with them, because if you're running a superhero, your army is going to be much more elite because you're investing so many points in this one piece, that your army really needs to be able to have an active moving forward and punching through the wall board presence. And Teclis does not have the ability to do that. And the one I didn't mention is the Gash. His OBR list, surrounded with Death Riders, those can punch through. We've seen Jasper play it, and it's just an absolute treat to watch. And
is Dawn Riders your best? They would be. I don't want to make this comparison, but are Dawn Riders your Varangard? If you're going to do that, let's hypothetically play that scenario out. Is it Dawn Riders who are supporting Teclis, who are trying to push things off objectives?
Yes, it would be. If you wanted to take that same mentality, it would be Dawn Riders. You would do it that way. But the thing that Teclis doesn't have, that all of those other superheroes have, is the tankiness. He is on a 5-up save.
He has the ward.
He does have a ward save. He does have a ward save, and Krondys doesn't have the ward save without the Praetors. And I just think that I find that if you go with that really hard Dawn Rider list, it would be 20 Dawn Riders in Teclis, you would be. I don't even actually think you could fit 20. They're really expensive.
You could, because Dawn Riders are 480. There's a reinforced unit. Reinforced unit is 480, I think. So 480. Let's say it's 1,000 points in Dawn Riders.
Yeah, 460.
Yeah, cool. So like almost 1,000 points in Dawn Riders plus 600. You're now at Teclis and like 400 points to spend somewhere. I don't know. Reinforced
you absolutely could. And look, now that you mentioned it, I'm probably going to test that over the weekend. And see if it works. So see, catch me at Geelong showing up with 30 Dawn Riders, a Lord Regent, and Teclis. And it'll be really fun. I'll have a great time. My games won't be 3 hours. They'll be 30 minutes instead. So I do think it's possible. But I think that a lot of the other rules in Lumineth fight against that mentality. I think you are much more looking at being a defensive castle and moving forward. I think Teclis can be at the center of that castle. But I haven't put on the board yet Teclis plus 40 Wardens and 20 Sentinels. I'd be very interested to see if it works. I'm really interested in going even harder with that and going like 40 Wardens, 40 Sentinels, 5 Ballistas in Teclis, because I have the models for it and I know that doesn't fit in 2,000 points. I'm just like being hyperbolic. But I am interested in seeing if that works.
I think some of your battles you'd win really big. Some battles you just have no tools. You just go, how on earth do I do this?
That's like kind of what I'm getting at, where when you start, well, the reason that I think Teclis isn't seeing play, even though I think he's really good, is that once you start leaning into him and trying to build a strategy around him, you lose a lot of the toolbox capability that makes Lumineth so good in so many matchups. You give your good matchups, you make them even better, and you make them really, really good. But you take some of your even matchups and make them worse. And when you're going to a tournament and you're going to try and hit 5-0 or try and make a top 8 cutoff, you need to be able to take all comers.
Yeah, I think between us, we've raised a lot of good points, and I don't know if it's because one of the questions I had with Teclis, and I keep talking Teclis a lot because everyone loves running their centerpiece models, and I think Teclis deserves being talked about with this length. And I've had some questions like, is it a points discount? Like, if we drop him to 450, so 550, sorry, to 450 is auto included for 450.
Yeah.
But if he was 500 or 550, like, is it a points issue? Is it a meta issue? If in 6 months' time, the General's Handbook is, there's no more than 5 objectives in any battle plan and it rewards more castles, or the battle tactics are easier to score because you don't have to worry about, spreading yourself thin. Is it just a current state of the game, or is it actually like because the War Scroll is fine. His points is fine, but I feel like it's just more of a meta pick more than anything.
I think the meta is the biggest issue. I think the objectives is the biggest issue. So many battle plans that require not only a lot of movement, which Lumineth's really good at, but require being able to stretch out. And Teclis helps you with that, but he also restricts you a little bit because you need to play a much more consistent castle. Or you don't need to, but I think you should be playing a much more consistent castle. It's funny you bring up point reductions for Teclis, because the chain, like, if I could show up at Jimmy Workshop and make a change to Teclis, it wouldn't be to reduce his points. I'd want to increase his points and then give him the keywords. Give him the Venari, the Alarith, the Sinari, the Huracan. Increase his points by 200, because you're giving him a lot. That's a lot of power. Increase his points to 800 and give him those abilities. And because, as we've been talking about it, I'm thinking about an issue that I have with him where he is a synergy piece. He's a force multiplier that doesn't synergize.
Because sorry, keep going. I'm just looking at the battle trace. Like, I'm trying to connect the dots because, like, to some people, like, what do I get? Like, let's hypothetically say, like, if you got the keywords right, you'd be tapping into what? I mean,
minus clearly be hit.
Yeah, you don't need deep thinkers, but you'd tap into the move like the wind, the shining company, the power,
and the reduction of rend.
Even lightning reflexes could help if you're trying to.
He does get that one.
Great, he does. Yes, because he's Lumineth. It's not tied to Venari Scenari. Yeah. Yes, yeah.
You always get lightning reactions. That's just your always battle trait. That's not a part of the Facets of War system. But like his only real synergy is that he always gets protection of Hysh off. So if you happen to be blessed by the dice gods, there's no point in running Teclis because you just always get protection anyway. And you have a reroll cut to cast built into your army. And that reroll to cast happens to be tied to the terrain feature that you want to be casting protection of Hysh from because it's a bigger base. You have multiple ways, your manifestation law and deep thinkers, to get bonuses to cast. So that 8 becomes a 6. And so like the main reason to run Teclis is to always get protection. Or if you really want to abuse Morbid Conjuration and build a castle around that, I think he's a synergy piece that doesn't synergize super well. So while I think we've said it really well that there's nothing wrong with his wall scroll, there's nothing wrong with his points, I think that we're just waiting for the right list and the right meta to make him work.
Yeah. By the way, I don't want to harp on too much things that we can't control, but even just something simple as like getting Shining Company. Like if he just auto had Shining Company, man, that would... Yep. For God's sakes, I'm pretty sure this guy gets free Shining Company essentially because of the sun hitting the metals and like it blinds you. So old Wolfman gets a -1 to hit, but old element of Hysh.
The thing that I like to that I do want to harp on about Teclis, last thing I want to harp on about him is the automatically unbinding and banishing on an 8 is way better than people think it is. Basically, you go up against someone and you say, hey, all of your spells now have a casting value of 8. Like, always. And so people who are, like, looking for that real consistent, that one spell that goes off on a 4 that they always get, unlucky. And your endless spells exist for one turn, no matter what. I am going to banish them no matter what.
Yeah. And there's no predatory spells now, so it's not like you'd summon them, then they move. You're stuck, so... good call. Like, I think it's a meta pick. Like, because I do get a lot of questions about Teclis, and I think most people want to get Teclis on the table, and it's just not a points thing. It's just a meta thing, and if the meta revolves a little bit, especially the battle plays, I think the battle tens and the battle tactics are the things that are holding us back a little. If any particular army like rose to power, I don't know if Teclis is the answer to that army. Like, I can't think of an army that if it became super powerful, like, Suns or, I don't know, Sylvaneth or something just rose to power, if Teclis is the answer to that.
If there's an army that runs a lot of units, just like a large number of units, then Teclis is the answer because Storm will just hit all of them every turn. But, like, that would be the only thing that I can really think of. So maybe I'm trying to think of what army runs like that. I mean, I played Teclis against Nighthaunt and found him really useful.
Soulblight just flubs the board. Like, we got a book coming out soon. Like, he floods like zombies and skellies and dire wolves. There's just so many of them going for recursion, maybe. But then again, we're doing that for 1 or 2 armies, not.
Yeah. Like, I have an idea around Teclis right now, and it's a list that I'm working on, and I think it's got good play, and it's much more focused around just using Teclis to enable a bunch of techie pieces, and then having him be like a consistent source of like a little bit of damage. And I'll find somewhere links to this video to post that list so that people can have a look at it, and any Lumineth players watching it can give it a go. Because I know people really do want to get Teclis on the table, so having another option, having another voice, trying to make it happen, I am absolutely in that court. I can't say the same about Alarith. I am not putting any energy into trying to make that work.
Post it in my Discord. That's all. Just post it in Discord. Done. All right. Last couple of burning questions for you, because otherwise this will be the Teclis show, not the Lumineth show. All right. This is the fireside rapid fire round. Thoughts on Regiments of Renown like Callus and Toll?
Callus and Toll is still amazing, even with a points increase. It does everything Lumineth wants them to do. I don't think any of the other Regiments of Renown, even the Christmas ones, are worthwhile in Lumineth.
So not the Stormwing, not the Nurgle's Gift. Man, I want to see a Lumineth, like make a shiny bunch of Nurglings. Like,
yeah, that would be really, really cool. I think that what those regiments are really good for in a lot of armies is filling a gap in your strategy that you aren't able to fill otherwise. Like the KO one's a really good point, really good idea to put it in armies that don't have a deep strike. But the issue with Lumineth is that we kind of do everything already with what we have.
If a new player approached you and asked what they should purchase to get started, what would your recommendations be for LRL?
Ooh, what's in our spearhead? It's
Don't start with the spearhead. That's the easy answer. All right, let's spearhead it. All right, let's assume I've got spearhead. I bought my spearhead. What's next?
Right. Okay. Alania and Alethor, like E&E. Not only is it a really good unit, but it's a really fun hobby project. Like, let balance the game with the hobby. It is really fun. So it would be E&E, River Blades, or
The other E.
More Blade Lords.
Light of Authority.
More Blade Lords. Yeah, Light of Authority.
Another E. E, and E.
Yeah.
E. All right, one more serious question, and then we'll do some fun questions. How do you deal with Alpha Strike armies?
Be tanky. Like, just be tanky. It's all about setting up your front line. Deployment is everything in this army. I'll plug it. Go back and watch Coach's deployment masterclass video from like ages and ages and ages ago. It still helps me to this day.
When I had COVID. I had COVID on that day. I'm like, buying.
Yeah. Like that kind of stuff helps with that. Think about the deployment zones. And the thing that I got trapped into a lot was thinking when I was deploying, I was trying to make it so that I could always do 2 battle tactics. Forget it. Pick one battle tactic you're going to be able to do if you go first. And then if your opponent goes first and Alpha strikes you, your battle tactic has to be do not waver or something combat related because, I mean, they're in your face. You have more options. So really focus on deployment and protecting your key pieces to prevent Alpha strike from wrecking your shit.
Here comes the fun questions. And feel free to play along, folks, if you want to, answer them, yell them at the TV or the mobile if you're on the train or whatever. If you could design a single unit for Lumineth, what would it be and why? It can't be Tyrion.
I was going to say Tyrion.
Can't be Tyrion. Killjoy.
Yeah, I got murdered. I got murdered because my answer was going to be Tyrion.
Go. If you pick a single unit that isn't Tyrion, what is it?
Phoenix Guard. Phoenix Guard. My dream is that Tyrion. So Teclis is with the Moon Spirit Selenar. Tyrion comes back. He's with the Sun Spirit. It's the Earth Phoenix. That's my dream. And then the unit that he comes with is like a Phoenix Guard unit. And like Blade Lords are the protectors of the heroes, and the Phoenix Guard are like the highly elite 3 models a unit, absolute murderers with halberds. That's what I want.
I want to see something with fire.
Yeah. Give them capes that are on fire. And they like do decent damage in combat, but then they do mortal wounds at the end of combat. And like when you're in combat with them, they're just like hurting you.
I imagine something like prosecutors with fire, but actually combat prosecutors, almost like,
yeah.
Like, I don't know what type of unit is like 3 murder machines that just fly in and like, I don't know.
I could see it like a kind of like a storm coven, like a unit wizard that is just really good in combat.
Yeah. That. Oh, no, probably wizard's probably the Teclis side. I don't know if Tyrion will
actually. Yeah, no, I'll cop that. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this is going to be like the regions where it's like all combat, all fists, no tricks. Just get in there. Speaking of Tyrion, when Tyrion's War Scroll comes out, what do you think it looks like?
Oh, I actually have such a good theory on this, and I've been saying this for so long. Ever since we got Alania and Alethor, I've been saying this. I think Alania and Alethor, especially their 3rd edition War Scroll, is a prediction of what Tyrion is going to be. Because if we look at them, they're the twins. Each of them is mentored. Alania is mentored by Teclis. Alethor is mentored by Tyrion. And on Alania and Alethor's 3rd edition War Scroll, they were a wizard level 2 with +1 to cast and just good spells. And all of that comes from Teclis. And the other side of the War Scroll was a sword that gets better as the game goes on and an ability to teleport if they kill something and heal themselves. So I think that is a good hint at what Tyrion is going to be. So I think Tyrion is going to have damage that escalates as the game goes on. In some way, may not be with his sword because that would just be a carbon copy of what Alethor does. It may be in some other way. And then he's going to have some kind of ability revolved around healing a lot or probably something Phoenix related. So when he dies, he comes back. and then maybe a teleport in there, but maybe not. And I also think that he will have some kind of like, not a burning mechanic like Tzeentch, but a burning mechanic like being around him hurts you. The thing I don't want him to be is a commander. I don't want him to be like he leads from the back and he is really good with commands and is a force multiplier. No, I want him to be a beater. I want to use the whole turkey. I want to get him in combat and wreck some people.
I kind of think of like Alariel meets Ashoran, where like Ashoran becomes like a super beat stick when he starts getting those points up, and Alariel gets in there, gets into the thick of things, and when she dies, she comes back on a dice rolls. Like you just can't get rid of her. Like I'd love him to be like not Nagash level, but like give me like a Kragnos like 600, 700 point. Just what he does very well.
I hope he's balanced in a way that he can be the exact same points as Teclis. And it would be like, if they're both 600 points, I want to run a list where I run both. And just like move them around and then run like a couple of units of Riddle Blades just to be able to play the game.
You're hilarious. You're hilarious. That would be actual fun. Who would win in a Magic fight, Teclis or Nagash?
Teclis. Did we not like or I didn't read it, but did we not look at all the Warhammer community articles when Soul Wars was happening? Like Teclis did beat Nagash.
He smoked Arkan the Black. Didn't he smoke him in
Light of Altharion smoked Arkan the Black.
Just straight deleted.
Yeah, a Light of Altharion kicked Arkan the Black into, I think it was like some sort of beam of light, and Arkan's gone now. So when my brother puts Arkan on the board, I like have to call a TO because that guy's not in the game anymore.
Stop ruining my lore. Like
I know, right?
Breaking my immersion.
I am sorry about the internet. Capital City, we can't get the internet.
All good. All right.
But yeah, breaking my law. What was I gonna say? What was I saying? Oh yeah. Teclis wins in a fight. Like Nagash is cool and all, but he's not an elf.
No, he's just a god of death. The last question, like if I didn't have this last question, I would just cut the stream of that last one. But I got one final question that I think is a spicy one. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
How do you paint Lumineth faster?
Oh, you do what I did. So I didn't bother with the trim. I hit them with a metal and then hit them with a wash that was based in the theme that I did. It doesn't look great. I'm no hobbyist. I'm no great painter. My name is not Tom Oliver, funnily enough. But like they look consistent. They look concise. You just gotta do a theme that ignores the trim. Hit up your local Slaves to Darkness player and get advice from them because they have the exact same problem, and they may have help for you.
No, or they're in a corner crying. I gave up my slaves because of the trim, and then I got given the Dark Oath box, and I'm like, I can see why I want to paint Dark Oath because there's no trim here. Yeah. Like I'm cool with this.
Or if you can stand talking to them, go find a 40k player or a Horus Heresy player and ask them, because I mean they have to deal with a lot of trim as well. Like they might be able to help you.
Nah, not to the detail. You've like stupid little lines on their power armor. You got like super intricate.
Yeah, if anyone's that is an issue with Lumineth hobby, but the bigger issue with Lumineth hobby is not breaking the spears of wardens.
I was gonna say that like the biggest issue is the spears, like the not breaking them, transporting them, moving them. Like the spears are a nightmare.
If you ever see me at a tournament playing wardens, you'll notice that like a good third of them are broken, or halfway down the pole there's like a little bubble, and that's where I've super glued it because it's broken, and it's like it's such a nightmare to move around.
Yeah, this is crazy. I like at the height of wardens, I'm like, you deserve this. Like if you're gonna spam wardens, like you deserve this. But now that like they're not that great, I'm like, okay, I actually have empathy for you now. But
until they make you like have to wait 10 minutes while they turn them all around so you can get into combat with them.
Yeah, that's when I say if your spears are broken, you don't get to fight with them.
Yep. That's fair.
Jacob, this has been awesome. I hope you have given ideas and inspiration to our fellow knife ears. Again, they're not the perfect army. They're not going to be going you 5-0. When you do, it is because you have played them very well. You have built into the synergy. You have made the most of your tools. And I hope this discussion has given you ideas on how to make the most of it and maybe to look at how to respond to the current meta. You know, we've had the battle scroll settle, we've had some adjustments. You know, how do you make the most of this next 6 months? Gitz is about to land. Soulblight's going to land. So who knows what's going to happen there and how that's going to adjust things. But I think this probably next couple of months is going to be relatively settled. Compared to the first 6 months, I think this is going to be a much more settled meta. So you can find that play style and those units and make them work for you, I think is going to be what I'm predicting until the General's Handbook. Like, I don't think Gitz is going to really shake up the meta. I certainly don't know what Soulblight's going to do and how the skeletons are going to, I don't know, bring back Soulblight. But I think you're pretty settled, I think.
Yeah, I don't think much is going to change for Lumineth until the next GHB. I think that's the only thing that's really going to shake things up for us. Just keep doing what we're doing until then, keep grinding. And then just hope we get Tyrion in the next book.
I don't think it's the next book, but
I don't either.
You can wait for your Knothi and Chaos Dwarves and add this to the mix of Malarian and all the things we think is coming. The Silent People, Beast of Chaos staying in the game. Like, add them to the big wish list that.
No, get Beast of Chaos out of here. Bestigor's -1 to wound and shooting. Actually, not a fan. Not a fan of that.
I have a trade. I'm like, how about we keep Beast of Chaos and we give KO back to 40k and you can merge them with the League of Voltan. That's the trade that I'm willing to make. But look, either way, a good dwarf is a dead dwarf, especially for you elf fans.
Yep.
Jacob, any final thoughts or any shout outs you want to make to the community before we wrap it up?
Look, the big shout out for me will just be everyone who goes to events and has a smile and is just there to have some fun. Like, it's amazing to see people at events. That's like my wholesome take. The other good shout out will just be to Liam. He was a fantastic opponent round 8 at TamCon. It was one of the most phenomenal games. And the same shout out to Nathan and Jaden, who I also played on that last day. Both phenomenal. Meeting them properly for the first time that day, it was really incredible. All the Geelong guys who stuck around for that day and watched and were really supportive of both Liam and I. It was really amazing to have. And I mean, the shout out has to go to the Dice Arcade people. All of those guys, the guys that come out to the events, my brothers. And yeah, I think that's all I've got. And for yourself as well. You're one of us. I count you as one of us.
It's pretty wholesome. Like, what you don't know is Jacob's brothers. So Tom and Sam do play as well. So it's pretty wholesome that all three brothers come together. They play. We travel often. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah. Sorry. I want to quickly mention Alistair, who was in the top 8, is another Canberra guy. So
there you go. Shout out. I do wonder, like, it's like a sliding doors moment because I had to drop out. Like, I got into the top 8. I had to drop out because secretly I had to go home and record Gloomspite Gitz, like, in preparation. Yeah. And like, what would have happened if one or two of the Gargant players would have stayed around? Like, it would have been a very interesting. And it's no disrespect to anyone, but like, I played Liam and I lost to Liam by like 4 points. It was a really tight game. But again, like, it's sliding doors. Who knows? Who cares? Like, it is a great tournament nonetheless.
It absolutely is those sliding doors. And when I was looking at the top 8, when I thought it was going to be yourself and Joel playing it as well, I still had the same assessment that the scariest army for me, in my opinion, and this comes from my opinion that I think Lumineth don't have many losing matchups. I think the scariest army for me was Nathan's Bestigors, that -1 to wound, and just the sheer numbers was terrifying to me.
And he spammed that unit. That was a very heavy.
There's 70 of them. And I ended up playing him in the first round of the top 8. And I very barely overcame it with a 10 up counter charge that like saved the game for me. So like, I mean, the dice fall how the dice fall. Nathan played phenomenally. And he was so supportive afterwards, gave me so much good advice. Like, that's what I love about the competitive side of this community is every time I've played against a really amazing player, win or lose, they are just so happy to try and make the community better. And Nathan's such a good example of that. So like, when I look at the sliding door situation of you and Joel, it's part of it is like, oh yeah, then I wouldn't have had to go against Beasts first round. But then I think the way the seeding would have worked is I would have gone against you first round. If both you and Joel played, I think you would have been 3rd seed and I would have gone down to 6th because I was in 4th, which means that because I was the 4th seed, so it would have been you and me.
No, Joel, because Joel was 3rd, I came 6th because I was at the top of the 4-1. I was at the top of the 4-1s. There was only 3 3-0, 5-0s, and Joel was one of them. So yeah, it wouldn't have been like you probably would have played Joel.
Yeah, I would have played Joel, which is again really scary. So I think like no matter how the sliding doors go, I still go up against a really scary matchup.
I think you and Joel need to play a TTS game and see what it could have looked like.
No, he'll ruin me and my confidence will go away. It's so fragile. It's so fragile, Anthony.
Oh, you're hilarious. And by the way, I've already recorded an episode with Joel, so if you want to go hear about Gargants and all their tricks, go do that. And then literally in a couple of days' time, I'm also recording with Liam, so you'll hear about the IDK and that matchup as well. But Jacob, thank you for your time, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. Jacob, I'll see you around.
Yeah, I'll see you around. Can't wait.
All right. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.